Here, I'll call this meeting to order at 7:03 p.m. and we'll first rise for the pledge of followed by a moment of silence.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States, for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We will move on to proclamations and presentations. We have one, a citation honoring Greg Bachro. In recognition, so I'll read. Then afterwards, I know I saw Greg and their family are taking a picture in front of the town seal with the citation. So, in recognition of Greg DeBacco, owner of Bill's Auto Parts Inc., for being selected to be among this year's recipients of the American Towman Magazine's National Order of Towman Award. The Order of Towman Award is bestowed upon professionals in the towing industry who go above and beyond in their service and assistance to their community, including local police and fire departments. Nominees for this award must be nominated by the police chief or the local fire chief. Nominated by Fire Chief John Lightell, Greg is one of 86 towing professionals from across the nation to be inducted into the 2021 Order of the Towman class for his unyielding dedication to the profession and his continued support of the community as a whole. Greg has exceeded his duty by not hesitating to provide heavy-duty equipment as well as his master operating skills to assist in mitigating precarious situations at his own risk. Being one of 3 inductees from Connecticut, we are proud on a national level for his dedication, outstanding efforts, and unending support of the community. Now, therefore, I, Steve Jones, on behalf of the citizens of Tolland, acknowledge Greg DeBacco for his dedicated service to the town of Tolland community. In witness whereof, I have hereto set my hand and caused the seal of the town of Tolland to be affixed on this 14th day of December, 2021. So congratulations, Greg. Thank you.
Thank you.
Here for you to bring home, it's a little protective seal, but if you and your family would like to get a picture of the seal, move the chairs out of the way. Give an opportunity to.
All right, sure. Thank you.
Yes.
Right.
I'm giving you permission, just take that.
Well, thank you.
Oh, okay, thank you.
On one side.
We're so proud of you.
Thank you.
Please. We also have something else for you this evening.
If the council doesn't mind, if I can
Yeah,
first.
of course.
So we want to present this back to Greg. This was Greg's national award that he received, and I'd like you to open it to share with the council so they saw what you got pinned at the conference. So I thought it would be nice to share with you guys. Some members of our department actually went out and put it and preserved it, and we thought it would look nice next to the town council presentation. Greg was very leery about letting this go.
Here we go.
Oh, very
Very
nice.
nice.
Oh, that's awesome.
Wow.
Good job, man.
Put my mask back up.
So, you know.
There we go.
So you have all your awards back over. Do you mind if I stand next to him?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, she's tough.
Very good.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. Thank you again, everybody.
No,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you for your
Congratulations.
service. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, so we'll move on to item 5, which is public petitions, communications, and public participation on any subject within jurisdiction of the town council. Oh,
Thank you very much.
oh, sorry, go ahead.
We're gonna have to do a motion to move up to the nomination.
Oh, right, that's correct. Thank you. I thought we were going to do for public hearings, but recognize I see Katie Murray's in the audience with their family tonight, and recognizing that they are much younger children, wanted to entertain a motion to move up 8.1 prior to 5 and 6, so that they would have an opportunity to see Katie sworn in and have an opportunity. So
So I would like to, I'm sorry, I would like to make a motion to move up 8.1 before public petitions.
Move about second.
all right. So moving on to 8.1 for a moment. Just going to pull up the meeting packet there. Oh, sorry, my apologies. Good reminder, not yet. So is there any further discussion? Otherwise, we'll do a roll call vote. All those, actually, we'll do a vote by voice. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That is unanimous. All right, so you just want to pop up 8.1, Lisa, just to provide a quick summary.
Yeah. Thank you.
Sorry.
Page 29. All right, so there's appointment to a member of the town council. We did receive the information from the TDTC for Katie Murray. Included in the packet was, I believe, Brenda Felic's resignation notice. So with that being said, I would entertain a motion to approve the resolution outlined in 8.1 to appoint Katie Murray as a council member.
I will second it.
Oh, you made a motion?
I'm sorry, I'm screwing up.
All right, motion made by
Make a motion.
Council Yudichak. Is there a second?
Slew the ball seconded.
Motion made by Colleen and seconded by Lou. Any further discussion? Signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, it is unanimous. All right, welcome, Katie. I believe now you can officially be sworn in, and
All right, Katie, I'm Kathy Pagan, Town Clerk. Hello, everybody. All right, Katie, please raise your right hand for me. Do you solemnly swear to support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the as well as the Charter and ordinances of the Town of Tolland, and to faithfully discharge your duties as a member of the Tolland Town Council to the best of your ability, so help you God? Thank you. All right, congratulations. Thank you.
so with that being said, Katie, you can be seated over here next to Lisa. And actually, if councils are okay, do you want to get a quick group photo before we continue business?
Yeah,
just
that
to
would
get
be
the-
very.
That's why I wore my jacket.
You can't rub him, he does not.
I forgot my phone. Would you be able to do a group photo of the council and email it to me or text it to me? Please.
I figured you.
That's gonna do it for us.
Okay.
You could do a couple.
Sure, we're reenact.
Of course.
Yeah, that's my better.
Just so we have some
Yeah.
better. You know how it is.
Change the-
I won't be bossy like I was with Greg.
We like it when you're bossy. That's okay.
I think that looks. Some good to choose from?
Perfect.
Good.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
great. Thank you.
Well, thank you. You can just email them, email text them. Yeah. Well, that's fine.
Nice. Thank you, everyone in the audience, for your patience. So, that being said, we will move back up to item 5, public petitions, communications, and public participation on any subject in the jurisdiction of the town council with a 2-minute limit. If you are online, you can hit the raise hand button. Otherwise, you're on a mobile device, it is *9, or if you're a member of the audience, you can approach the table and state your name and address for the record. All right, seeing none, we'll move on to item number 6, public hearing items. Consideration of resolution to amend the code of the town of Tolland, chapter 112, Parks and Recreation Areas. So, Lisa, if you want to kick
Yes.
us off.
We've gone, we've had a few meetings on this, and this is the final public hearing discussing the cannabis restrictions in town recreational areas. So tonight I have with us our town attorney, Rick Conti, and he will be discussing the changes that we made. At the last meeting, I think the concern was what a recreational area was and whether it was going to affect residents. We worked through it, and I'm going to let Rick join in to discuss it.
Okay.
Rick, are you still here?
Yes, good evening. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Excellent. I do recall the last meeting, like Lisa just said, and there were a couple of issues, one of which was, I think, being more clear about the vaping definition and making sure that that was covered under smoking, and also a question as we started to work through this about what actually constituted the recreation area. There was also some discussion last time about whether or not a museum or something else would be included. And I want to start by saying that what we are looking to amend is chapter 112 of the code, and that's parks and recreation area. So we were concentrating just on those areas and not to expanding these smoking ordinances beyond that. If the council deems it appropriate for us to look at other places in town that you want to regulate smoking, we'd be happy to do that. But we were concentrating on the parks and recreation area. And as Lisa and I started to go through this, one of the things we found was that the term recreation area was not defined. So we went to Bruce Watt, and Bruce was very helpful in terms of looking at other towns and how they defined it, and then coming up with a proposed definition of recreation area. And you will see in the definitions section tonight, recreation area is listed there. There was no such definition last time. You'll also see that there were some modifications made to the smoking definition. And at having defined recreation area, a lot of the rest of this ordinance just fell in line without having to be changed from the one that you saw a month or so ago. So with that, I'm happy to take questions from council members.
So I open the floor to questions from council members. I think I saw Councilor Lua, followed by Councilor Nuccio.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, Rick. Just a quick question for you. The definition of recreation area, but also now looking at the issue regarding park, where the park, it says any parkland, open space, schoolyard, or other property, including building the property therein. Do we fall back into the issue that we were discussing the other day previously regarding that definition also falling, since there's other, since you're worried about the housing projects and the, and other housing that would fall definition of recreation area, would that park definition also now still encompass that? Because it says any building and property therein owned by the town of Tolland.
So these parks that are described here, Crandall Park 2, Cross Farms Park, Heron Cove Park, River Park, Tennis Courts, Old Cat Hill Road, Tolland Recreation Department, I would say is included within those parks would be included within the definition of recreation area.
Okay, all right. I just want to check and make sure and also have that on the record there. So, because it's just, my concern is, again, you know, if somebody's gonna look at this, when they say other property, under the definition of park, other property, including building the property therein, that could be something that somebody could say, well, then the building that's owned by the town of Tolland and try and possibly create an issue. So I just wanted it clear on the record. So when, if there's ever somebody that goes back in and checks it, it's clear that it's our intention not to include some of these, some of the properties, including the housing projects, the elderly housing, things like that, as a definition of park or recreation area.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm set.
Thank you, Councilor.
Thank you. Hey, Rick, how you doing?
Good evening.
I do have a follow-up to what Lou asked, because I was going to ask the same question, and specifically in concern to the definition in park and also in recreation area, because it talks about Tolland Recreation Department. Tolland Recreation Department is in the Parker complex, as is Parker Place. So, and it is a town-owned building, so I don't further definition around that. It's the same building. That's problematic to me. I don't know that, I don't know how we delineate between the two.
So in answer to your question, I'm pretty sure that I can speak for Bruce wherein he would say that the Tolland Recreation Department would not include the senior housing. But if make that absolutely clear, I could put in a parentheses and right after the word department and say not to include senior housing or something to that effect.
I think that may be wise, or I don't know if we want to label it senior housing, but right now, how long is their lease? Their lease is like 50 years, right? Or something like that. It's pretty long.
Yeah.
So I think we could get away with that for now. Because it's the same exact building and it's owned by the town. So I'm concerned that including buildings and property therein and Tolland Recreation Department is all one area. And then the last question that I have, Rick, is the last sentence in recreation. Recreation also includes any field, open space, or outdoor area, whereas a town-sponsored activity and or event is actively taking place. So with that, some fun or celebrate Tolland, or you know what it is. That happens on school grounds, not on any of these fields, but it's a recreation sponsored activity. So what does that exempt? Does that preempt or exempt?
So let me explain how some of this came about. So when Lisa and I first sat down, we initially thought that we would be able to ask a very simple define or have him pull out all of the Tolland recreation areas. And he initially sent us a list. And then I went back to Jason and said, you know, are there any other town properties that could conceivably be considered a recreation area, like an open space property or something like that? And he came back to me and said, geez, there are hundreds of these all over town. I don't know. He said, I could go and identify every single square inch of town property. He said, you know, do you really want that? And I said, no, I don't think we really want that. And at that point in time, I turned it over to Bruce to ask him to define it. And this last sentence is what he proposed as kind of a catch-all. If there is a recreation event that is sponsored in some area of town-owned property that is not within these prescribed areas up here. He wanted the catch-all to include any really easy way to do that other than what he said right here.
Okay, so I guess then if we're comfortable with it, like I said, my only question really is the one event that is specifically held on school grounds. And I'm assuming the school has their own policy for this. So in that case, I don't know if the school has updated their policy for cannabis or not. That Celebrate Tolland is held on school property.
So that's an interesting question, and I don't know whether or not the Board of Ed has any policy on smoking. The Miracle Field, for example, might be another example where it's on school property, but, it could be used for recreation areas. So there's going to be some of these conflicts I think we're going to have to work through.
Before, if you're all set, I was going to go for one round. If there's any counselors had questions or input.
Well, I guess my only thing is, should we update that to remove Parker Place?
I think that would be reasonable to update, yeah, if it can be a quick amendment, a quick addition
Yeah,
to the final
you could
document.
just say as discussed. or
Yeah.
whatever under motion.
Okay,
Um,
so I'll make a note of that, to incorporate that
that's
into
what I think.
Councilor.
On page 8, on the very bottom, it refers to authorized sporting events at the old high school field or football field. Is that an outdated reference?
That's a fair point when we just want to designate it as Tolland Middle School versus calling it the old high school.
Or just,
Is it still?
I could change that.
Okay. Are there-
I guess
Oh,
I
sorry.
do have one other question about. I have to find it again. At the very end of section 1-10, the designation of smoking and tobacco use areas for certain events, which allows the town manager or their designee to designate smoking use areas. What is the intent with that?
The intent with that is, for example, if you're at the lodge, for example, you have a wedding or something, you have a special event going on, there may be a special request to allow smoking outside, not in the building at all. There wouldn't be any smoking out for cigarettes outside, but not cigarettes, pipes, cigars, but no cannabis or cannabis-like substance to be allowed, and that would be under special permission.
Should it state then that the intent here is for outside and not inside?
It says certain spaces, so
Maybe certain outdoor spaces, just to be clear.
we could, if you wanted to say outdoor spaces.
I mean, I would assume probably there'd be some reasonable assumption that people would not be smoking indoors in general, as it's a
No.
state law, but. I don't know, how do counselors feel about that, about certain spaces being either explicitly certain outdoor spaces or it just being the presumption that state law would
State law exempt, state law. is
exempt
higher
indoor
than
smoking
Preempts.
or
previous.
preempt?
Yeah.
I'm all
Yeah.
off the M's tonight.
What supersedes?
There you go.
Supersedes, I like that one.
Okay, so I think then that's, if you're okay with it, Counselor Murray. We'll leave that as is and just, allow for due diligence from the town manager that doesn't mean that it's very clear to any applicants, so. All right, are there any other questions before I go for a second round? I saw Counselor Lewis hand up. All right, seeing none?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just, again, a quick issue. I think that I would concur with the adding in the Parker Place as a paren in both the parks definition as well as recreational area definition. I think including including buildings and property therein under park, comma, with the exception of Parker Place, or I don't know if you want to go broader and say any housing complex run by the town, something along those lines. I mean, just because if we don't want to name it specifically, because I'm always one where I don't want to name something specifically and then have the possibility of down the road, the name changing, the purpose changing, or us opening up something else where we now have to come back and change the code again. So I think it's a matter of any housing type facility, the town of Tolland, under both those, under park as well as recreation area. And then there was.
How
something-
about?
Yes, go ahead.
Exemption of any residential town-owned building? Would that be acceptable?
Residential town-owned building.
Well, I think that's a contradiction in terms, because you have residential, you have town-owned, so I think it'd be town-owned residences. I mean, I'm splitting hairs, but that's my
Oh,
job.
that's fine.
But wait,
Yeah,
listen,
but
I'm
wait,
sorry.
but wait, there's more.
Yeah, no, the buildings that holy moly.
The
Speaking
Tolland,
is
the
really
Tolland, the
hard.
Tolland Housing Authority, is that what you're thinking of, that one
Not just
area?
that, but the houses that we lease. The housing, the low income housing that we have,
Yeah, on the park, I mean, on the,
there's the housing that we have that,
I mean, the nonprofit.
yes,
The land, but they
The
own the
land.
buildings.
I know, but that's town owned land, right?
yeah,
So-
so any, I guess I would say, yeah,
So that's a personal residence, so.
I would say any town-owned property used for residences, or I don't know. I mean, because the more that you try and define it, the more difficult it gets. So, Rick, help us.
Rick, hey, this is.
Well, so this is more difficult the more you get into the weed. If you would like, I think Lisa and I can go back and try to determine all of the areas that it sounds like you would like excluded and come back to you one more time. The public hearing part of this can be done tonight and the public comment, obviously. But then if you want us to come back with another draft, happy to do that.
Mr. Chair, with your permission, I don't think that's something that I'm necessarily looking for, that I'm asking for. I think that's my concern, is that we add something on and then we have to come back. So I think I'm looking for something, a term that's general enough that would be able to encompass something like that, but not anything that is like, where we have to list every potential property, because that could be onerous. We'd have to have like an appendix or refer to, another document. So I think just a general term, which I mean, if they're leaving it up to Rick and Lisa to craft that word.
Leased
Yeah,
housing,
that's what I was going to.
leased housing,
Yeah, there you go. Tell them lease housing.
because that covers the property, the houses that are on that, and it covers Parker, it covers.
Yeah.
Leased housing.
I think that's,
Yeah, I think I would be amenable to that. Are there any counselors that have any concerns about that before we open to the public?
Well, so I would throw another wrench in the works. So at Parker, the town doesn't lease it.
The town owns it, you're right, the town owns it, they,
Doesn't lease it. So if you say areas which are residential located on property owned by the town.
there you go.
All right.
So Rick, you're gonna type this up and send it back to me, right?
As long as you keep the notes, Lisa, I'll do the typing.
Would you, I can type it. Would you please read it to me again, the exact language, so I'll make sure I have it.
Sure. That we're excluding property leased for residential purposes and owned by the town of. And the concern there is that when you go into Tolland nonprofit, you have homes which are on, I think, 99-year leases that the town owns. But the structures are owned by individuals and they get mortgages on them and they're really treated like individual houses. And I'm not wants to be extending this policy to those owners.
No, I think that would not be the intent of this language adjustment. And I think that could be pretty clear in this discussion.
And then just one last comment and I'll be finished. I promise. For the, when we were talking about the recreation areas and we we're talking about the school functions and everything else like that, I think if it's something that is a town sponsored as opposed to Board of Education sponsored event, that would preempt any Board of Education policies. Because if it's a town function, if it's a town sponsored event and not BOE sponsored event, we're essentially using, the town is subsuming that property at that point for a town event. So I think that this would automatically override. So even if the Board of Education didn't update or change their policies, this would preempt or supersede, if you use John's word, policy that might be existing. That's just my thoughts on it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilman Luba. All right. Is there any other discussion before we open the public hearing? The public. All right. Therefore, I entertain a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, it is unanimous. The public hearing is now open. If you, I believe a 3-minute limit is the general guidelines for public hearings. You can hit the raise hand function, or if you are on a mobile device, you can hit *9. Anyone in the public? Anyone in the audience? Give you an opportunity. Seeing none, I would entertain a motion. Oh, Eugene Koss, I believe your hand is up. You're able to unmute and then just state your name and address for the record.
Hello, I'm Eugene Koss. I live at 59 Kate Lane in Tolland. I'm here as an individual citizen and taxpayer. I think some of you know me. I'm quite familiar with the conservation properties in town. I raise a question, and it does relate to your definitions. You've discussed what a recreation area is, but important to me is above recreation area is definition of park, which defines parkland, open space, schoolyards, and so forth. And it specifically include properties or lands under the delegated management oversight of the Tolland Conservation Commission. I know something about that. My interpretation of what the proposed code change is, you would not regulate cannabis use on conservation areas because they're not in your definition of a rec, and there's nothing that's altered the park area. I wish to point out, I think it's serious, and there's been some discussion among peers of mine. Our conservation areas in town have rustic trails. In some cases, you might say rugged. Those trails where you have overlooks, where the drop-offs could be much more than 10 feet or 20 feet, could be 50 feet. So some of these trails, particularly if you combine them with spring or fall where it could be wet and muddy, could pose risk to hikers. And I want to leave you with the question, wouldn't it be wise to also the conservation areas from cannabis use, because the increased risk could pose danger to to users. Users in, I guess, both senses of the word here. My recommendation as an individual is conservation areas should be treated similarly to plan to regulate, that is to prohibit cannabis use in recreation areas. That's my recommendation. Again, I've conferred with people, but this is my recommendation alone. Thank you.
Thank you, Gene. I believe Lisa or Rick, I remember Rick bringing up this concern when we first started the public hearing process. Was there any update or clarification on that concerns?
The current ordinance excludes the Tolland conservation areas. That is under the auspice of the Tolland Conservation Commission, and they would be the ones that would make any of the allowances on those properties. Rick, do you have anything else that you would want to add? And it is in here under the definition of park.
Okay.
I mean, I think that's a policy for the council to determine whether or not there's, smoking should be prohibited there. It's not really, I don't think it's really a legal issue. I'm not trying to duck it, but it depends on how broadly you want there. I mean, this specifically excluded these areas from coverage under the ordinance. And then the question is, I don't know if there's been any coordination with the Conservation Commission, whether or not they believe they want to control it or they want the town council to control it through this ordinance.
I'll let Gene respond first, and then Councilor Nuccio have their hand raised. All right, go ahead, Gene.
Yes, thank you. If I understand it correctly, and I did confer with the chairman of the Conservation Commission before today, I believe it's fair to say we're unaware this was planned, and thus the commission hasn't spoken with you. And it could be something was lost in the mail and I think it's fair for me to say, I conferred, raised questions, and he said, well, if I wanted to speak, but there was no sense, I didn't gain a sense that we had been approached as a commission. It certainly wasn't discussed at a meeting of the Conservation Commission. If we had been asked, again, I believe we talked about it and deliberated on it and made a recommendation.
So, Mr. Chairman, I have a
I
recommendation.
do not want to, oh, excuse me.
Sorry,
I
go
was
ahead.
going to make a recommendation to the chair. I think Gene's point is well taken, and perhaps this does not have to be the final version of this ordinance. We can change this ordinance to include anything we want at any time. If the Conservation Commission comes to the council, perhaps they can send a letter or an email saying we want certain areas covered. We can either deal with it in this ordinance or have a separate ordinance to cover those areas.
Okay.
Thank you, Rick. And then we looking to respond to Gene before I go to
Yeah.
Tammy. Okay.
The idea was that once this was all passed and everything, I was going to have David Corcoran meet with the Conservation Commission and advise them of this and to try to see if they wanted to move forward with something similar under their management ability of their parcels of land. That's how we were going to address that, but we were waiting to get this completed first. And also the planning and zoning starting to address the other side of what is under their
Cognizance, yeah.
right. So there was no intention to leave out the Conservation Commission in any of the discussions. However, a lot of the rules that are in here that are beyond just smoking and cannabis relate to the parks. So when this was originally developed, it excluded anything to do with the Tolland Conservation Commission. They have their own rules and regulations that guide the use of their areas.
Okay,
So it was going to be addressed to see what they wanted to do once we got this passed.
no, thank you. And then Councilor Nuccio?
Okay,
What Jean was saying, it brings up a good point. I know this is parks and recreation, but I guess the first question is then is conservation land considered recreation? And I guess do they already have an ordinance about smoking or anything in the conservation? Because technically they fall under council, right? So their ordinance
Mhm.
would have to be congruent with our ordinances. So my first question is, do the conservation areas fall under recreation areas? And if so, why would we have separate ordinances than the original here? I understand what Jean is saying. I guess they're governed on their own comment. I'm not quite sure I understand how that works if they're reportable to council. And if they have a separate ordinance already, then updating their ordinance.
I would need to look at their ordinances because I have not reviewed any of them. Rick, by any chance, do you have any background on any conservation, or Jean?
So I don't have any background in the conservation ordinance, but I would say as I read the definition of recreation area in the catch-all phrase where it says recreation areas also include any field, open space, or outdoor area, whereas a town-sponsored activity and or event is actively taking place. I would say in general, I mean, unless there's
No.
a specific activity, it's not going to be included there. So there would be a whole bunch of conservation areas and any other number of areas in the town where the town owns property that would not be included as a recreation area.
Mhm.
Councilor Luba?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, and just sort of to follow on with that it appears that the Conservation Commission has rules, regulations regarding their property. And I think that it would be, since we already have them creating their own rules and their own regulations over the property that they have authority over, that it would be wisest just to leave it out at this point and allow them to either to take action on it, because what we're going to do then is if we take action and supersede their authority on this one area, then it could create conflict with other issues. So I think that to keep it neat, leave it how it is, and then allow them to either adopt it by their own regulation or by proclamation of their commission, or to implement their own policy. That's just, I mean, from a legal standpoint and from just a statutory standpoint, I think that's probably the easiest thing and the best thing to do. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Luba. Anyone else for discussion? Great.
Intent, right, of this to have them, okay, so.
To have them, yeah, to
Right, so
address
then-
them separately.
Okay,
That
well,
was
then-
the plan.
Then I would support what Lou said too. It makes sense to me. And especially because that was the original intent.
Yeah.
Of this. So I think we should go ahead and pass this the way it is and then let the EDC do their thing.
Yeah, and I think I would be in agreement before we close public hearing, and just to kind of convey that to you, Jean and Jim, that there wasn't any intention to have you involved in the conversation. It sounds like the interim town manager had a process that they were talking internally with David. So hopefully, once we move forward, once the vote is finalized, that process will move towards the appropriate individuals.
Okay.
Thank you, Jean. Is there anyone else? Councilor Nuccio?
Yeah, I'm looking on the website. I'm sorry. I'm looking at like on our website here and it's saying like dogs leashed under town ordinance. So they're referring the town ordinance and I can't find on here where they have their own ordinances. beyond the town.
I don't think it's ordinances. I think it's the rules and guidance that they have while participating on their, or going on their, on that property.
It's like management plan for rare species and
Mhm.
natural resource inventory.
Yeah,
All right, Gene, if you'd like to continue, you can go ahead.
just to clarify, because there have been some questions, the way the Conservation Commission guides attendance on its properties is we have management plans for each of the properties. Those management plans are periodically reviewed and updated. And they have rules like dogs must be on leashes, leashes must be held by someone who's responsible for the dog, and so on and so forth. So we can amend management plans and add language. I would imagine we would have to think in terms of language parallel to what you have your code change. And we could do that for each of the properties. Those amendments to those plans go on a 5-year cycle. So we'll have to cycle through the dozen or, well, it's more than dozens of properties and change the rules. We can do that. My purpose about asking was if there was an omission that was unintentional in your rule change, because the way we read it, it looked like you were talking about all town properties. And we thought we would fit in. It appeared upon reading we didn't fit in, and that's why I'm here tonight speaking with you. But I will take it back to Jim and we will figure out what we need to.
Thank you, Gene. My apologies, Councilor Buchanan, if you have anything else there.
That's it.
Okay. All right. Is there anyone else in the public, or did anyone want to respond to any of the other comments? Let's see, Rick, let's see, anyone else just want to make sure, scan through to make sure everyone's actually physically raising their hand. All right, seeing none, I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make that motion.
No further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, it is unanimous. So public hearing is closed. We can return to the document at hand to do the final resolution on that. Point of page for that. If there's any further discussion.
Page 15.
Thank you. Sorry about that. All right. Is there any further discussion? I think Lisa, are you and Rick pretty well laid out with all of our conversations how to finalize the language of the resolution?
Mhm.
Okay. So in that case, I would entertain a motion to as outlined in 6.1.
And with the changes
Yeah,
that were discussed.
with the changes that were discussed at this meeting.
Make that motion.
All right, motion by Councilor Regan, is there a second?
Move the ball second.
Councilor Rice, it's seconded by Councilor Luba. All right, seeing no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
You're gonna abstain.
There is 6 ayes and 1 abstention, so that passed. All right, we'll move on to item 7A, reports of boards and committees responsible to the council. I believe, technically, I thought I saw Brenda might have been on the meeting. I don't know if they were here for the purposes of for anything for tourism, but I don't think I see them anymore on the screen. Don't know if technically, Katie, since you resigned from the Birchwood Building Committee, if you can provide any report. Are you comfortable writing a general update, or would you rather not?
I'm happy to.
Okay, go ahead.
we're waiting for the final few things to be, that are on back order to be delivered. I understand the swing set was installed and pictures went out. There's one change order that came across my email this week that hopefully the building committee will take up. But it is essentially finished. We're just waiting for the last two things to come in. And once they do, we'll get billed and we will close out the project and start hopefully the audit process.
Thank you. And actually, I'm just realizing, Councilor Yudichak, technically, and for you and Councilor Michio and Lisa, the ARP subcommittee is technically responsible to council. So do you have an update from your first meeting?
Sure, we met, with Councilor Lucia, Hancock, and Ms. Beverly, we met on December 9th to discuss APA, that's the American Relief, I'm sorry.
Yeah, you can say
Well, I
that, but-
want to explain what it's good for. I'm sorry, American Rescue Plan, thank you, Kim. On December 28th, we're gonna be bringing forth a solution on allocating $50,000 funds from the 4.2 million that Tolland is being granted. That's hopefully a study and needs of assessment for people that have been affected with some water issues. I don't know if Lucio or Lisa wanna chime in with anything else?
I think you got it.
I got it?
Yeah, you got it.
In speaking with Beverly, who was also in attendance at the meeting to provide her insight, because she's quite talented with anything to do with our water systems and things like that. The $50,000 that will be brought forward in a request at December 28th is for an engineering study. I was under the impression it was a needs assessment. Connecticut Water clarified with her, and I'm asked for an outline of services to explicitly say what they will be doing for that $50,000. Because he said he would not be analyzing the entire town to determine what the needs would be for the entire town as part of that study. It's more of an engineering cost analysis to provide for us to apply for an application, which we will share more information at a later date. But the goal is to try to do this engineering study to have the documentation that we would need in order to apply for some funding, if that's how the council decides to go.
Thank
Can I just add a little bit to it?
Yes.
I just wanted to make note that we also did discuss other the funds could be used, so if you think it was a productive first meeting, I'm glad actually we did create it, and I think Mr. Chen and I will work well together. Disagree to agree.
Listen, if you keep bringing me chocolate with caramel in it.
That's it.
Thank you. I don't believe we have any other reports or boards communicated to the council, so moving on to town council liaisons. I'll actually kick it right since you're on the roll.
I have like my notes in order because I've been to so many. Do you want to start first with the mental health? Since,
Oh, I don't, I'm not prepared to give an update on that.
Oh, okay, so I will, a little.
Okay.
So we met, mental health, we met together. They're ready to present. I mentioned that a few times. We're hoping they'll be on the next agenda. I'm hoping that we'll give them enough time to. And then they're starting to work on the next 3 components, the next phase, including the teen center, funding skills for adolescents, class, and then improved mentoring programs. All right.
Sounds good.
Thank you, Councilor. Your check will go.
I've got a
Go
couple
ahead.
more.
Keep going.
Do you want me to go?
Yes, of course, sorry.
Then I went to the last Board of Ed meeting. They started their discussion on their personnel requests, just beginning stages for the year. 21, 22. Discuss APA, and then last night, had the first meeting with Parks and Rec. They decided to discuss it or have been discussing the portable ice rink. Money's gonna be paid by, it's gonna be volunteer fundraised. They're considering two park places that are, two places to put the rink, either Crandall's their first choice or Adherent Cove is their second. I guess they're just concerned about liability, and that is granted immunity. And now they're just finishing up their gym floor, and they're starting on some special event ideas.
All right. Thank you, Councilor Ducek. I'll go down the line, Councilor Luba.
The Birch Grove Building Committee was already covered by Ms. Murray, so that makes it easy for me. And for planning and zoning, that Mr. Reagan was there as well, that John was there as well, so I'll leave that for him.
All right, sounds good. You're in the spirit of giving.
I am a giver today.
It's the red jacket. Don't let it fool you.
All right, Councilor Nuccio.
Thank you. I had a meeting with Eastern Highland Health District, and they elected their new leadership for the health district. They reviewed their budget, and they also discussed a few different things regarding COVID boost testing sites, stuff like that. And they also were talking about nobody's come up with a funky acronym yet, but the infrastructure, the IIJA, IIJA, the infrastructure money. And they were specifically talking about the clean water funding on that because it is an issue that they have been tracking for years now. So that's all that I've got right now.
Councilor Regan.
Yes, they met last night. There was a discussion of drive-through regulations and noise regulations. Now that we have that drive-through at Dunkin' Donuts, there's some concern about the noise that may be generated due to the amount of cars there. There was discussion of temporary sign enforcement, including pennants, banners, and streamers, and the removal of signs on public property. And the car wash on Route 30 came up in conversation as there are some signs out there that may have been on public property, and those will be removed, or to remove them if they are in fact on public property. They're worried about sight lines for drivers on that. There was discussion about zoning regulation changes related to variances for accessory structures, and that mostly means sheds. That may sometimes mean portable garages, but it mostly means sheds. And residents are now paying $325 for an appeal, and they talked about, is there a way to get around that, charging the residents that fee? And then they got into a discussion on downtown by state regulation will only be allowed one retail establishment for recreational cannabis. And there was discussion about what zone it should be allowed in. And planning and zoning talked about if they do nothing about recreational cannabis, then it will be allowed with certain restrictions, and the approval process will be just as any typical retail business will be. That's if they do nothing. They're talking about going through going to public hearing, because they do want to get some public input on this rather than making the decision all on their own. So they're talking about setting up a public hearing, and that will include the growing of marijuana in Tolland as well. So that will be, I'm not sure when that's going to happen, but that's their intention, is to have a public hearing on that. And it may include changing and making medical marijuana and fall into the same category. So and into the same retail zones. And then they again, they talked about the growing in town and what agricultural zones they would fall in, but they didn't make any definitive decisions at this meeting, and it will more than likely go to public hearing. And that was it.
Thank you, Councilor Vice Chair Regan. Councilor Todd.
Attend the meeting of EDC, and they talk about the drive-through at the gas station, and try to recommend it to planning and zoning, as the chief says. And I did make a comment about opening a town for more business and everything else they consider, and Lisa is going to get into it. That's about it.
Thank you, Councilor Khan, and Councilor Murray. You haven't attended any yet at this point, but we'll certainly get that situated as we move forward. And then for myself, there was a Conservation Commission meeting on the 9th. They did discuss the naming of the heron sculpture. I think councilors have been invited this Saturday at 11:30 for kind of one of the final events of the year for the Walnut Park. So hoping everyone can make that. Questions on bow hunting potentially on conservation properties. I believe they decided not to move forward with any potential bow hunting at this time, but they'll continue to discuss that. As well as a few other updates from properties and a proposal to have a assistant head steward position for the Conservation Corps. Mr. Rubino kind of talked at length about when they started out that process. It was a much smaller scale of trail, so they're hoping to establish that position to all the land use in town. So, and then on the 13th, there was a special meeting for the Tolland Water Commission. They had executive session regarding contract negotiations, followed by a regular meeting where they held discussions about their ongoing leak detection issues. They found a few and had them resolved by Connecticut Water. There's another one that might be a little more substantial, I believe in the Walbridge area, that Connecticut Water is still working on. Otherwise, they are continuing to discuss ongoing development in Fieldstone. And that was about it for their meeting. So that is it for me. So then we'll move from, oh, sorry.
I'm sorry, can I just make a correction for Lisa? They call it Parks and Rec, it's actually the Tolland Recreation Advisory Board.
Thank you, Councilor Yudichak. All right. We'll then move on to item 8, new business. We did already do 8.1, so 8.2, consideration of a resolution to authorize town manager or temporary town manager as are necessary to settle claims against certain pharmaceutical distributors and manufacturers related to the prescription of opioids. So,
Okay, again, Rick Conti is here this evening to discuss this as well. As you may or may not be aware, there's several communities or towns within the state that have filed lawsuits against the pharmaceutical manufacturers regarding the prescription opioids and the effects on some of the individuals. There's been nationwide settlements. The state of Connecticut is in the process of working towards that settlement and the distributions of funds. And there's certain contracts that need to be signed or agreements. And I'm going to let Rick discuss this more in detail.
Thank you, Lisa. People who have been on the council for a while will recall that this dates back to 2017 into 2018, when the council authorized the town to participate in claims being made against a whole host of manufacturers and distributors of opioids across the country. There were suits, 4 of them brought in Connecticut. Those are still stand it from a conversation this afternoon with Devin Hartley, who's our lawyer for this. In the meantime, there was multi-district litigation going on nationwide, and that multi-district litigation recently, meaning this summer, proposed a settlement which would amount nationwide to approximately $22.8 billion in settlement proceeds from the primary distributors, McKesson, Cardinal Health, and AmeriCorps Bergen, and manufacturer Janssen Pharmaceuticals. This whole settlement is a very fluid procedure. This started out, as I said, in the summertime. They set at that time a deadline to 2022 for all of the municipalities who wanted to participate in the settlement to execute what's called a participation agreement. The participation agreements, in theory, will be collected by our lawyer, Devin Hartley, who represents municipalities, majority of the municipalities in Connecticut. And he, along with all of his counterparts across the going to be collecting these participation agreements, and depending on the number of communities that elect to participate in this settlement, the court and the mediator and the parties will determine whether or not the settlement is going to go forward. The anticipation is that the vast majority of the municipalities are going to want to participate in this. And the way that breaks down is this $22.7 billion, depending on which group we're talking about, their share is going to be paid over either 9 or 18 years. The amount that's going to come in total to the state of Connecticut is in the ballpark of $300 million. Now, when I say the ballpark, that number is a fluid number that depends on how many people participate, how many communities participate in this. And so the exact number is unclear. To make it further unclear, it's unclear how much is going to come down to the municipalities and how much is going to stay with the state of Connecticut. Our team, Devin Hartley and his group, met with Attorney General Tong on Friday afternoon, and he was told at that time that the Attorney General's office negotiating this was going to be something that was going to be dealt with by Governor Lamont and the legislature through further legislation going forward in the early part of 2022. So it's impossible for me to tell you at this point how much is possible to come to the town of Tolland if you elect to participate in this. The only thing I can tell you is statewide, it's 300 out of the $22.8 billion. 15% apparently is going to go to the state. 15% is going to go to the towns. The remaining 70% is up for negotiation with a negotiating committee that in part is composed of people from the state of Connecticut and in part is composed of the negotiating committee for the towns who have participated. So how much is involved? However, at this point in time, what we need to do in order to move forward is to authorize Lisa to execute the appropriate participation agreements. And you say, well, why can't you give me the participation agreement today and let me know? And the answer to that is, as of Thursday of last week, there was one participation agreement that was being proposed. Attorney General Tong on Friday, there's a second participation agreement. There is a Zoom conference tomorrow that we're going to participate in. And at some point in time, before January 2nd, 2022, I believe there's going to be an agreement between the state and the towns about exactly what participation agreement should be executed. And when that happens, we're hoping to have the authority of the council to allow Lisa to do that and then move this forward. What exactly happens going on in the future, we're going to have to report back to the council and tell you that.
Thank you, Rick. Is there any questions from the council? Councilor Rick?
This seems pretty straightforward. Why would we not say yes?
So think of any reason whatsoever why you would not want to say yes. I mean, if you think about it, we have an agreement, which is a contingent fee agreement with the firm that Devin Hartley represents and the firms that they in turn represent. And they have been working with a number of other firms across the country to get one resolution of all of these claims. It would be impossible for the town of Tolland to bring a claim against all of these companies in any way that has any kind of favorable cost benefit. I mean, it would cost a fortune. And because we're in it for a contingent fee, and as I understand it from reading the materials, the attorney's fees are being limited to no more than 10% of the total settlement for all of the firms that are involved, which if you compare that to contingent fee arrangements is pretty low. It's obviously as low as it is because of the huge number of dollars that are involved. But I can't think of any reason whatsoever that the council would not want to authorize Lisa to do this.
Thank you.
We believe in you, Rick. You can do it.
I wouldn't take this on.
Come on now, be aggressive, be aggressive.
Quick question, possibly for Lisa or Rick. So from my recollection, we generally do take settlements and placements of the CRE fund.
Just raising my hand to ask, you've talked to you about that.
Okay, well, go right ahead.
Yes, anything that's a large sum, or hopefully a large sum, one-time settlements, we usually try to put aside to use for one-time expenditures. And I can't think of anything better than to put it into the capital fund, to set it aside for future allocations towards the capital needs. So we will issue less debt in the future and try to do more pay-as-you-go capital payments for infrastructure needs. So that's the recommendation here, is to, if those funds come to fruition, or when, that it would be deposited into that fund.
Okay, and the only other follow-up would be is how long it takes for us to be settled and what funds are provided. Would there be any opportunity to get input from the Tolland Mental Health Task Force? Because a lot of their purpose is substance use, that this is an opioid settlement, that those CRE funds could be used towards one-time expenses, that if they provide a recommendation, that's a one-time expense, we could use that.
Absolutely. That would be something that you could reallocate the funds from the capital non-recurring to the general fund or wherever reallocated in the future. Or if you specifically want to amend this draft resolution to say a certain amount goes somewhere.
I think not knowing the timeline of when we even have those funds dispersed, I'd rather, if they're saying it could be months or years, I'd rather have that to the offices of a future council unless it comes back to us. So I'd rather
Sure.
leave this as is. Any Councilor Michio, you had a question?
And all. I was just gonna say the same thing. I think if this is gonna go to the CNRF fund, I think obviously we want to use this for a one-time expense thing, but I would like to review that with recommendations from the mental health and substance use. If there's something that they are going to be referring to us that is a one-time spend or getting a program up and running or something like that, I think the appropriate use of this money would be to be allocated toward the substance use issues that we know we have in town.
Councilor Yuchek?
Love Steve's idea and the mental health, and same with Tammy as well. I think that would be very where I am, and that would really appreciate that, right, John? We've got a lot of great ideas, and anything would help. So
Yeah. Well, if there is no other discussion, then I would entertain a motion to approve the resolution as outlined in 8.2. Moved by Councilor Nuccio, is there a second? Second by Councilor Regan. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, any abstentions? All right, it passes unanimously. Item 8.3, consideration of a resolution authorizing appropriation of $398,000, $155 to the COVID relief fund for Board of Education from the general fund unassigned fund balance and the setting of a public for December 28th, 2021.
As you may recall, at your joint meeting with the Board of Education, it was requested that this item be put on the agenda for consideration for funding with some funds that were left over as of the end of last fiscal year. The Board of Education requested that they had, the audit is just about complete. I'm still working on some final touches with it, but there's about $7,000 remaining in the Board of Education budget. The superintendent of schools did outline the reasons for those funds remaining at the joint meeting. The Board of Education has requested that 50% of those funds be allocated to their COVID relief fund, and then the other 50% would be requested to go for their education reserve fund, which that can't happen until after the third quarter of the fiscal that ordinance. So we're hoping to have everything finalized soon, but we can definitely say that 398,155 is certainly available in the unassigned fund balance if the council should decide that they would like to allocate this towards the COVID relief fund as discussed in that joint meeting.
Thank you, Lisa. Is there any discussion?
So I'm wondering if there is any appetite from what we learned. So this was we put it forward as an idea to do this, to be able to handle the COVID expenses and that. And after a year, I think we've learned some things from it, how the money was used and everything else. And while I'm still in agreement with having the fund and the proposed agreement, I'm wondering if we could add to 3, section E that says if there is money left at the end of that regular budget, those funds be used for these expenses rather than going to using this fund and then having the big balance left over again.
Go ahead if you'd like to respond.
Okay, this particular agreement, the education COVID proposed agreement, it was the final agreement with, it was between the Board of Education and the Town Council. So I think that would have to be something that would be discussed and revised to the document. But certainly you could make that request of them to say that you'd like to add that to this and we could share it at a Board of Education meeting. You could make that recommendation now. We can propose it to them, and if both sides agree that that's what you'd like to do, that's certainly up to both boards to agree upon.
I just think it makes sense because last year with the 800,000 left there was $287,000 was in the original COVID fund. They could have used that 287,000 from the regular budget. And then the 800,000 would have been 500 and something instead. And then the money that was left in the COVID fund, we could be looking at using that money to go towards the church field or any other thing like that. Just doesn't make sense to have the end of the year and then use a different fund for expenses that could have been paid for in the regular budget. So that's my thinking on that. And if there is desire, I think that it's a good ask to add that line modification in there.
I didn't know if you wanted.
No, I was just thinking about what you said.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would concur. I think this is something where concerns, that was when we originally looking at the COVID fund and we discussed it and adopted last term. That was one of my concerns, is that this is something where the fund would be used and then to save expenses for the Board of Education. And then they have all this money left over, and then, so it was a concern, and I would concur with Ms. Nuccio's recommendation. I think it's something that I would ask that we as bring forward to the Board of Education and ask them to at least consider it and before we go forward on a public hearing, because I just think it makes sense. I mean, it's to allocate money and have it used instead of the normal operation funds, where our intent was to have this as an emergency fund, where if they ran out of money for their normal and using their normal operating funds, that this would be available so they could opt expenses that they encountered by COVID, but instead it was used in place of. And that's not what, that was never my intent, and that was not what I voted for last year. It was for an emergency fund offset, not to replace. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Luba. Any further commentary on that? I see. Councilor, you check on, are you still contemplating, or did you want to
I'm just
respond?
trying to process what they're saying. That's all I guess. That you say. Can you just say it one more time? I'm sorry.
Sure. So basically, if you think about, they had the $287,000 in the COVID fund, and the COVID fund was supposed to be for emergency, usage for COVID stuff that wasn't planned, right? At the end of the year, they had $800,000 left. That $200,000 could have been paid for out of their $800,000 that was left, and they still would have had more than the 1%, they would have had 500 something thousand dollars left still, right? Is if there's money in the budget, use the budget. If we go over budget, or we have something that's absolutely exceeding the budget, then you would use the COVID fund, not put aside exactly $287,000 worth of expenses to use that, and then have $800,000 left at the end of the year. So just use the budget, and if you go over, then hit the COVID funds.
So the 800 is left over in their original budget
It's the original.
without the,
That's the only one that.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, the 800,000 is the original budget, it's the balance that they didn't
So it would
spend.
also be used for the board of ed though.
Well, yeah, that's the agreement, is it would be used for any unplanned COVID type things. And then if it doesn't get used, the agreement was if they don't fund their 1% fund, so in that year, they didn't do the whole amount to the 1% fund, right? They put the majority of it to the COVID fund. If they had used their regular budget, they could have then fully funded the 1%, and any balance would have gone back to the general fund, or in this case, we would have rolled it to what we're doing now. But instead, they used all the COVID money, and now we have the $800,000 as a balance.
Go ahead.
yeah, I would say probably have no strong objections to that being relayed to them. I think it'd be good just to have this in place, but know that we've had to have it during our public hearing deliberations to potentially amend it at that point. So I'd rather probably at this point leave it as is, convey our conversation with Lisa to Dr. Will at the Board of Ed, give them time to provide a response, and then most likely invite either the chair or the superintendent to that public hearing to further discuss and provide input from the Board of Education's perspective. Is there anyone else before I add additional comment? The only other thing I noticed from resolution is it says it's a hybrid meeting, and I'm noting in the future of our minutes or our agenda packet that we may be voting to make this meeting fully remote. So I was gonna ask for kind of an amendment to that motion, that it would be Zoom hybrid or fully remote, in the event we do vote to make the meeting fully remote. There's no objection to that. Yeah, right now as it reads, it says town council chambers and via Zoom hybrid meeting. But we have a future agenda. We're gonna use that.
It's gonna change that.
That's gonna
Vote on
change
it.
that, yeah, so,
So just change the resolution to say Zoom or fully remote meeting.
you know, Zoom hybrid or fully remote, so. There's no objection to that. Just want to give a moment, I see, okay, seeing no objection, I need a motion to approve that. Or sorry, let me reiterate, make a motion to set the public hearing hybrid or fully remote for December 28th, 2021.
Movable, make a motion.
And is there a second? Second by Councilor Nucci. All those, any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, it passes unanimously. All right, moving on to 8.4, resolution to reallocate appropriations approved by resolution adopted on July for the financing of certain projects.
Okay, back in July of 2020, we had several capital projects that were authorized under a bonding resolution. Each time when I go out to bond, I will check with every department head, I'll check with the Board of Education to make sure that they are going to be using those funds, otherwise I won't bond the full amount. I was assured that the dollars for the Board of Education parking lot was going to be needed. And as things came about and savings were enjoyed, it came in about $28,000 or almost $30,000 less than the 90,000. Well, at that point, I had not issued notes, I issued full bonds. And the only thing under the bonding resolution that we can do is to another project that was in that particular bonding resolution. I can't put it into anything else but those items. You're authorized under that bonding resolution. Had I not issued the bonds, I would not have had this situation. I could just return the money when we paid off notes. But at this point, we're stuck with $30,000. In any respect, though, it could be beneficial to reallocate that 29,818 to the firehouse design project that was included in that bonding resolution, which I included a copy as part of your packet this evening. Costs, we're still bidding out certain parts of the project, but with COVID and everything else and availability, we're concerned that costs could come in than anticipated. So what I'd like to do is allocate those funds towards the design portion of that project. And if we need it, at least it'll be there for that piece of it. And certainly if we don't spend all the money, then we don't issue all the bonds. I have not issued all the bonds for the firehouse project at this time. I've only issued notes. So that's my request, is to be able to move those extra funds to that project.
Is there any discussion by council members? Councilor Luba?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I just want to make it clear, Lisa, that this isn't something where we would be getting money back, or that we could just say no, then just have this money, that it wouldn't be spent. Because it was part of the bond, it has to be allocated one way or the other. That it's not something that we would be able to reinvest somewhere else. It's got to be part of that bond package.
Right, that is correct. It's strict Internal Revenue Service rule. And the funds do have to be spent down fairly quickly regarding our IRS rules as well. So this would satisfy, because the other items in that bonding resolution have already been received, paid for, and this is the only area that it possibly could go. And it's needed.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure that that was clear for
Yep.
for everybody as well. So, thank you. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Luba. Councilor Murray?
Firehouse was essentially a design build using modulars. Why would there be increased costs for the design of modular that are being done on the site there?
The entire project is not all design built. Firehouse 140, and certainly if you have detailed questions, I have the fire officials here that are involved in the project. Does have some renovation work. There are certain types of oversight and bidding requirements that we use our engineering firm for, and those are part of the cost. But again, the materials to build those buildings, even though it's design build, the cost of those materials are escalating because of the economy right now. So if I could use these funds as the design for the other building that will not be a modular, that will help offset the availability in the main project itself if we did need extra funds. 30,000 is not going to be much, but hopefully we're going to be able to make this all work.
I mean, it's a 30% increase from what was in this original bond resolution.
What was that?
Well, you're saying it's $30,000.
That's what,
And
Right.
the original bond resolution was for $100,000. For firehouse.
for the firehouse
for design
design,
costs for the firehouse.
yes, it's adding 30,000 to that original,
So it's a 30%.
to that particular project, and a reduction to the other project.
And if you haven't spent these funds, if you haven't bonded for the design costs for the firehouse yet, is that correct?
That is correct.
So money could be rolled into the firehouse design and we could borrow less for firehouse design?
That could possibly be the case if we don't move the funds. This is a separate project altogether. This firehouse design is a totally separate bonded project from the actual firehouse
Right.
renovation.
Right.
What this would do is free up $30,000 in that other project to cover the cost of escalation, whereas we would pay for the design and such from these funds.
So there would be design costs in the other allocation.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any further questions from councilors? I would entertain a motion to approve the resolution as laid out in 8.4.
Lou will make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Seeing no further discussion. Oh,
Can you please do it by a roll call vote?
yes, we'll do a roll call vote. So, Counselor Yudichak,
Aye.
Counselor Luba,
Aye.
Counselor Nuccio,
Aye.
Counselor Regan,
Aye.
Counselor Khan,
Aye.
Counselor Murray.
Aye.
That is unanimous. Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you very much, everybody.
All right, so 8.5, approval of the December 28th, 2021 town council meeting being held only remotely through Zoom. This I know it's pretty short and simple, but if you have any additional context.
Well, being a holiday week, there's some people who are traveling, or there's different demands on personal time for each and every one of us. And the request here is to be able to hold it remotely. I myself happen to be out of state, but will be attending the meeting remotely. So we're requesting that we have accommodations for everybody to be able to participate remotely.
Thank you, Lisa. Is there any discussion on this? All right, seeing none, I entertain a motion to approve the resolution as outlined in 8.5. So moved by Counselor Regan, seconded by Counselor Murray. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Seeing none opposed, that passes unanimously. All right, so we are on 8.6, appointments and vacancies on various municipal boards and commissions. Those are outlined in the packet as 8.6A through 8.6B. So I would entertain a motion to approve the appointments to the vacancies on various municipal boards as outlined in 8.6A through 8.6B.
Lou will make that motion.
Motion by Councilor Luba, is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Councilor Yudichak. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Seeing no opposed, that passes unanimously. So we move on to old business. 9.1, consideration of approval to allow the town manager to authorize applying for a safer grant, staffing for adequate fire and emergency response through FEMA program. Lisa.
Good evening again. Tonight, I do have John Lytell and Carl Dojan from the fire department here. This is a continuation of the request to be able to apply for a firefighter assistance firefighters grant program to increase the staffing levels of the fire department. We initially requested up to 5 firefighters. Certainly it's to decide if you want 0 or 5 or some number in between. There was a presentation previously given, and I don't know if you need any highlights, but I could certainly have John highlight if necessary, regarding the need to provide coverage in the town to meet public safety needs within the community. The goal of this particular grant, if is we'd like to apply in January when it opens up. This would give us the authority to apply for it, but however, the goal would be that the grant would cover the first 3 years of the employment of whatever number of firefighters, yes, public safety officers that you decide upon. And then moving forward into year 4 is when the town. My proposal was to try to allocate, to start building it into the budget early on. And I had given different scenarios, and I know Tammy had worked on different scenarios as well. And those were supposed to be included in here, and I'm not sure if they have been.
Off my number.
Thank you. And the goal with that was to build it into the budget a little bit each year, so that the first 3 years, money would be going into the budget, so the impact on the mill rate would slowly be building so that it would be there in year 4 to fund these without hitting the mill, excuse me, I should not say hit, affect, have some sort of effect on the mill rate in year 4 all at one time. So it was to ease in the burden or additional costs
Yeah,
during that period of time. In the interim, we currently have the municipal stabilization fund, and what I would propose is that even though the grant would be paying for those services in years 1, 2, and 3, I'd like to take those funds and allocate fund during those first 3 years. And then in year 4, it would be up to the town council if you'd like to maybe phase in a little bit back from the municipal stabilization fund to offset year 4 coming on board with additional funding at that point, or you could use those funds towards one-time expense capital needs. And that's the best thing to do in the overall, in my opinion, would be to take those one-time revenues and apply them towards one-time expenditures. So we're here tonight to ask you if you would consider the approval to move forward with applying for this grant and to determine what it will take for. And we're here to answer questions for you. The impact on the mill rate was recalculated, and for some reason it was not copied. Tammy, do you happen to have it with you? I apologize for this.
Hold on a second.
yeah, if you do have a copy, maybe perhaps email it to
Yeah,
Lisa, and then it can be shared on the screen so that we can all see
I
it.
think I can get email here. I'm not signed in.
While working on that, I'll open the floor to any, summary question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know that when we were in the discussions previously, that one of the questions that I had is whether or not we would be able to go for, apply for a fine. And then if at a later point in time, we decided that we could only afford or only wanted to go forward with a lesser number, like 3, either 4 or 3 officers, would we be able to do that through this grant? Is it something that we can ask for higher, but then grant lower, or do we have to go for the exact number that we are looking for?
What we found out, and I'll let the chief say if anything, but from what I understand, ask for 5, you have to go with 5. If you ask for 3, you have to go with 3. They won't allow us to ask for 5 and only go with 3.
So it has to be the exact number that you're looking for.
Unfortunately, that's what
Okay.
we were advised this week.
Right, I mean, that answers my question. That's the one, that was a significant deciding factor for me and what's going on here. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you, Councilor Luba.
I sent it to
Okay, so he could share.
Yeah, so Councilor Regan has a question, and I'll get my,
Let me hit stop share, and so you can share.
in a moment, once I get it situated, I'll
Okay,
post it to the
sorry
screen.
about that. It's a different one. We redid it.
There's only really one number. There's the mill rate on there, and then there's one number in the first scenario. When Steve pulls it up, I can,
Right, so yeah, if you want to go ahead and stop sharing the
Yeah.
screen, I'll have to throw mine up there. All right,
There
can
we
everyone
go.
see
See it
that
there,
file? Is it
yes.
clear?
can you make it bigger? Okay, I can walk through that if you want.
I don't know if we
You
can.
should be able to make it bigger, Steve. Just go down here.
Yeah,
There you go.
yeah, just let me know if you need to adjust. I'll use the trackpad to.
Slide over to the right more, right?
Actually, if you hit escape, Steve, hit escape up top, it'll. So people don't see that.
Oh, right, there we go.
How's that? I reduced the participants for a little
That's
bit.
better.
That's
Great.
okay.
All right, so is that clear for everybody to see on the screen, either the 2 main screens or on your personal device? if you're on the Zoom call.
Do you want me to just go through the number?
Please, if you don't mind.
All right, so I took Lisa's original file here, and this first scenario, if you can scroll up a little bit, Steve.
Yep.
Was the 5, and because the grant is only a 3-year grant, I'm sorry, scroll down, I'm sorry. Because the grant is a 3-year grant, we would have to pay for all 5 people in year 4. So what this is showing is the first 3 years, the amounts that are expected to be paid. And then to follow that logic, what Lisa was saying, because year 4, you'd have to pay for everybody, back out the salary and the expected, the full term employee amount for one person. So that way you would only have one person coming in year 4. And then in year 5, you would have the full hit for all 5 people. Like it would just go through all 5. So that one there is the only one that had the offset dollars. Because the theory is if you turn around and take all those dollars and increase the budget theoretically here by one person, so that way it's built into the mill rate. So when you have to start paying for it fully, the funding is there. But if you then back it out, you're removing what you already put in. So you're gonna be, the mill rate then goes up and down at that point. I highlighted these numbers because if we went with the 5 resources after the 4th year, we would have $434,000 in this first scenario. We would have $790,811 in the second scenario, to go to what Lisa was talking about, the municipal stabilization fund or some kind of one-time capital expense. If you continue to go down, Steve, these next 2 sections here, or if we went.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. You referred to 1 scenario and 2 scenarios. What's the difference between the 2?
Okay, I'm sorry, go back up.
Yep.
So what we did, what Lisa, back up please a little bit more.
Yep.
Right there. This is the first year, you would add the impact for 1 person. The second year, it would be the impact for 2 people. The third year would be the impact for 3 people. Then in year 4, it would be all 5. So you'd add 2 more people. Smooth it out by backing out 1, year 5 would have everybody. This next scenario, sorry.
Can I interrupt for 1 minute?
Yes.
Just to
absolutely.
clarify also, if you look under the column where it says annual budget and then budget increase, you will see that column that says budget increase. In year 1, in that first scenario, it would have only been an increase of 85,000. Year 2 would be 89,000. If you go down further to the second scenario of, these are for both for increasing it by 5 officers. The first year would have an impact of $170,000, which is much higher than, but I was giving you 2 different options of how you might want to phase these positions in.
And that one there, Katie, that one is putting 2 people in year 1, and then 3 year 2, 4 year 3, and then full 5 there. And off to the side, which you can't see now because it's expanded, is the actual the mill rate increase that you would have to do for any of these people.
Slide over.
If you want to go down a little bit, yeah, see, so you'll see that first one would be like a 1.33% increase in the mill. If you want to go down more, Steve, the last 2 scenarios are for 3 public service officers. The first one is, it's just adding 1 a year. And we wouldn't have to add that 94,000, it's just the 3. In year 4, everybody would be factored in, and we'd have $528,756,000 to put towards one-time expenses. In the second section here, Lisa started out with 2. 3, and then in year 3, we just stay there. We're at the full 3 people. This would be a bigger impact to the mill rate because you're adding the 2 up front, and you would end up having $701,000 in that that extra fund of dollars.
And those are not percentages, those are mill rate.
Yes, those are not
increases.
percentages. It's just the actual mill rate increase based off of the net grand list, as we know, right? Include anybody that comes on or off or crumbling foundations, et cetera, et cetera. So those are the 2 scenarios that were put together, the 5 and then the 2, and then the impact budgetarily for those.
All right, and Lisa, Piscusi, if you need a copy of this, I can forward it to you as well.
Thank
'Cause I'm sure you want it for your records for reference.
Thank you.
No problem. Right. For discussion, actually, do Counselor Yurcheck followed by Counselor Regan, then,
John was first.
okay, so Counselor Regan, Vice Chair Regan, Colleen, and then Kate.
Okay, so there's no guarantee if we apply for this grant, we're gonna get it, right? So let's assume we apply for it and we don't get it. The need is still there, right? So what are we gonna do in that case? We have to budget for these folks, right? It works.
Well, the positive part of this is that in next year's budget, I was going to be asking for at least one PSO. The documentation here shows that we'd be budgeting for it anyway. So in year one, we would know whether we're gonna get that grant or not. I would be budgeting for it in any respect to, as long as approved for it. So if we do not get the grant, then we have to revisit the thought of, okay, what are we gonna do going down the road? Is the council going to want to support, to move forward with adding more officers in the future? Certainly, it's in the game plan here to phase it into the budget as it is, one at a time. But you would not be able to hire all three at the same time. The grant, you'd be able to hire all three. So if we were to move on this and we don't get the grant, what I would propose is that we just start out with hiring one PSO, because we would definitely be asking for that. If you approve it and the town approves it through referendum process, we'd be able to at least move forward to get one person. And then if the grant is awarded, then we can move forward with the other two positions. But in the meantime, we would only move forward with one until we knew for sure where we were at. Then we'd have to revisit if the council would want to support, I mean, if the council wanted to support 3 people in 1 year, which would be a significant number. Certainly, that could be deliberations, however you want to proceed.
Okay, and then you said that if we apply for 5, we have to take 5, and whatever we apply for, we have to take, but we haven't applied for any as of yet, is that right?
No, I need your permission to be able to move forward
Okay,
with
so
this.
would it make sense to have the discussion, to have less than 5? Rather than starting with 5 and then trying to build that into the budget, would it make sense to start with, to apply for that grant? I know Assistant Chief Dozier said if we apply for 1, they won't even consider it, right? What are your feelings about applying for 3 or 4?
Based on, we have to follow certain NFPA standards for the size of the town that we're at.
I'm sorry, can you say what NFPA means?
NFPA is the National Fire Protection Association.
Thank you.
They are it's a consensus standard that dictates levels of staffing and service for the fire service. We follow under 1720, which is a combination volunteer standard versus the 1710, which is a full career. There's a lot of differences in between, and staffing is the biggest one. Our staffing is based on size of the town and the population and size. Right now, we're a rural town, and our requirements are basically to have 6 people at all time to be able to be deployed, get on scene, and start operations within 14 minutes. And this is fire only. This is not, we're not talking EMS. In getting our numbers, we're looking at 3 years from now, what are we gonna need? We cover right now 6 to 6, Monday through Friday, and there are times because of EMS, that 4 of those personnel are out of town, leaving 2 back in town if we get a fire call, which is not able to do an operation safely. Bringing the number up to where we did, that would get us to a good point in operating safely with the call. Our calls have been going up, I believe, about 30% every year. We've had a huge year this year. We're up over 300 calls from last year. And EMS is a big part of it, which depletes the firefighting personnel. With the volunteer situation that we have right now across the whole entire country, it's basically at a very serious issue where people do not have the time to put the time into volunteer for training, for responses. And the chief and I just went to a seminar, a 2-day seminar 2 weeks ago, retention and recruitment. And this problem is everywhere. And we brainstormed, but the average life, actually career span of a volunteer is about 5 years. So we've been fortunate enough right now, we have a program with UConn that we get EMTs getting service hours, working with us as students, about a 2-year commitment to us. So our core staff of volunteers is way down. Each volunteer has to do about 30 hours a month to cover our schedule, and that's only covering 1 ambulance. And based on what they get for a stipend is about 10 cents an hour that they're putting in. Our firefighters are covering also, and they're about 30 cents an hour. But they're responsible for showing up for 13 to 15% attendance to emergency calls. So it's very tough with people with small families and small kids and activities and things going on that they don't have the time to do this. And we're trying to manage it so that we can save what we have for volunteers by giving in our busiest hours of the days to be the backup. We go to a lot of repeat calls, nuisance calls, for lack of a better word. We go to a lot of mutual aid calls because the staffing issue is everywhere. So we're just trying to keep people from getting burned out and keep us from having to go to a full career department because people. We're at the point now where we have, most of us are old fogies that are here for 30, 40 years that we've been doing it. And then there's a huge gap down to the 20-ish. But when they start building a family, their time dissipates. So that's where we've got a big gap in the middle. And as we get older, it's a little bit tougher. It's a very demanding job, a little bit tougher for us to get out when we're 20 years old. So we're trying to be proactive in this and also fiscally responsible to the town to not wallop them with a $5 million bill in 5-6 years because we can't get any more volunteers.
You know, and that's where I'm struggling with this.
Mhm.
You know, trying to find a balance between the need and then you know, the cost to the town.
Right.
Just apply for the 5 and hopefully we'll get it.
Mhm.
You know, and then worry about the rest later, because it sounds to me like you've made it clear that there is a need, and it's not just Tolland, it's everywhere.
Right.
So I definitely support applying for the grant, but I'm still just struggling with the best way to do that
Mhm.
economically.
Understandable.
We appreciate that. I mean, so the notes that you have in front of you say that, you know, we made, and some people are asking, well, why did you make a change most recently? Like 10 years ago, I said I need to be at 10 people to go to cover that 6 to 6, just to get that time frame, because that's when our school buses and our kids are on their way to schools. And the same aspect coming home at 4 or 5 o'clock, but the volunteers are leaving at 5 or 5:36 to go to work. So we changed the hours and we've been trying to supplement a body or two, like we did a couple of years, trying to merge it. My future concern, which you will see in the operating budget, is we've recently, like Carl has said, this is not just Tolland. So all the response times are getting higher, but the commercial services have gotten a lot of this COVID or extra stuff, and I'm not speaking against any commercial services. They have gone in and attached into the national EMS database, and I will be sharing with the town manager in my operating budget, their advertisement post, which starts them off at part-time rates. Myself and about 45 chiefs called the commercial services in the last week and said, why did you just do this? Because now you're going to be taking our people. And it could really have a shattering effect, especially around our community of Tolland, Vernon, Ellington, Willington, Stafford, etc. It could be a rippling effect that could be very. So the summit that we went to is something this year's 2025. It's not just the fire, it's not just the EMS, it's the police. And all the recruitments and all the numbers are down. We're just trying to move forth. But, obviously with personnel and management, you need the other resources behind the scenes to, guide the workers and guide the people. But like Carl's saying, we're at that point where we're trying to forecast this, but we can't catch it because of what we've recently, as far as the call volume, the opiates, the medical, the mental health, it's just a cachet. And obviously we're trying to be proficient to provide the right state of service to the community as we add in our apartments, our condos, our businesses and everything else, because that's going to have a rippling, shadowing effect.
Thank you.
All right, so I think we had for the order, just to step away from, I think it was Councilor Murray, followed by Councilor Yudichak, then and this is single time and Councilor Khan, and then we'll go back to Tammy because I get Murray's as well.
Yeah, I didn't ask any questions last time, so
Okay.
I just explained it.
I think I don't understand why you need additional. Can you explain that to me?
So we're very 2 ambulance services in town.
By 2 ambulance services, then you have
2 ambulances.
vehicles.
Yep.
Okay.
So probably easier to give a tour and explanation and show the numbers and the services. But since the packet that you have in front of you, I think the last numbers that were there that were provided to you, I think the call volume on there was 16 or 17 the last time we gave that last number data to you. Should be in your packet of
18.
mutual aid, call runs, etc. Yeah, data calls.
Mutually received.
Percentage by hours, the findings. So you'll see there's a trend that is running there. A couple of my documents, I wish we didn't print out well enough, but when we gave the call volume numbers, which I don't know why the printer is. Yeah, obviously, an average call volume 2012 is 1650, 2016, 21 is 1864, which we gave you as an incomplete. That 1864 as of tonight is at almost 2400. And this was just given to you how long ago? So as your call volume goes, obviously the shortage is what we've said in the beginning of the shortage of the extra volunteers to recruit people around during the day. We've done what we can as far as very fortunate, very lucky with the UConn students and the extra people that we have to provide the backups. But, depending on the type of nature of call, we're not, this funding for the SAFER is strictly to cover fire, to get the personnel, because we have to be very supportive and writing. And I've spent numerous times getting additional outside staff to get educated as far as the right wordings and different stuff if we get the approval. But the problem is a simple fire call by NFPA, National Fire Protection. Their number they want to see on the scene for a house fire is 15. we ain't close. Now, it'd be fortunate if we lived in a city or a department that was closer, because you'd be getting a city department that would be coming with 4 or 5 guys on an engine. A lot of those city departments, and I don't want to say anything, obviously against any of the towns that are close by us, but some of those other towns run strictly just fire, rescue, or first responder. Fortunate with our response and our staffing, both day and career volunteer, that they're combination individuals. So we would be pursuing to hire the combination vehicles because that's what we cover across the board. So when you get calls that take 2 or 3 people out, that leaves 1 or 2 persons in town. That second call has been increasing dramatically within 4 minutes. Now there's only 1 person in town, maybe myself or maybe 1 other guy. We don't know if a volunteer's got a vacation day that day or so. We don't have their schedule of who might be jumping in or coming down. Some days when the oh my God call comes out, yes, it's nice. You'll see a response level of 19, 15 people. We have a lot of fire police, we have a lot of admin, but what is your credentialed certified fire, interior structure fire, or your EMT level? That's where the numbers, so somebody were to get hurt or you're killed in a line of duty, they'll look at the OSHA numbers and the requirements. It's nice to pull in a mutual aid, but like I said, we have mostly volunteer departments around us. You might only be getting 1 or 2 people on their truck, and maybe the other guy is driving. So when you get an apparatus in, that's 1 guy on a hose pump. So every 2 firefighters that go into a structure, legally you need 2 firefighters just standing outside for a backup to rescue them. So the personnel increases. So right now, nighttime and weekends or whatever, you have your duty officer with the EMS crew that's on from Yukon or other volunteer staffing. They're hitting that second call. We're very fortunate that we separate the town. Crystal Lake is the secondary main station. Road's the main firehouse. But like I explained to some people, jump in your car at 9 o'clock at night and respond from center of town to Bucks Crossing somewhere else. You're looking at a 15-minute response time. It's what type do we want to require? We haven't been hurt, we haven't been bitten, because we have a lot of people that volunteer was home up on Stage Meadow or whatever, and was there in 4 or 5 minutes, so you had a first responder body. We try to provide a lot of our volunteers and officers with the right equipment and everything else, but it's getting harder as the monetary, the budgetary stuff. So a lot of the first responders don't have an AED, don't have the Narcan, don't have the EpiPens. It's only certain ones. We try to sanction that through calls are taking, 2 or 3 people, depending on the type of call. You get a CPR call, you transport, you're looking at losing 4 people out of 1 call. And it's increasing, if you know what I mean. Those highway calls, you're talking 1 or 2 pieces of apparatus that's blocking something. But the problem with, especially during the daytime, if it's a 2-car accident and you only have 3 or 4 people on, by the time the rescue truck gets there, cuts somebody out enough and jumping in the ambulance, and I'm calling somebody to come pick up the rescue truck to drive it back to the firehouse because there's no one to, and then also they get hit with that second call. So, and as we're trying to be proficient, as the infrastructure and the business grows in the community, you want to have that succession planning, because if we're facing this and the other towns are facing it, your backup, similar to where Carl went Saturday, and I won't say, but Carl will say, 10 minutes?
Yes. We went to Stafford to Evergreen, which is a 20-minute ride for us. By the time our time starts when you call 911. For another town, they're calling, trying to get us an ambulance, couldn't get an ambulance. By the time they go through the mutual aid process and could not find anybody close enough, it came to us, and it was 45 minutes till the time we were in the ER with that patient.
So a lot of the calls, a lot of stuff is not saying anything against the healthcare system, but we're closing Rockville. A lot of the ambulances are going towards Manchester, St. Francis or Hartford. Well, that's a 2-hour turnaround time coming back from that call. So you lost your bodies, what you had for 2 hours going to St. Francis or Children's. And also they get hit with the second call and they go to the other city hospital. Willimantic's closing. So, it's a big dilemma. And obviously a lot of our doctors and healthcare officers are saturating the area, but you can ask Vernon, in Ellington, in the other towns, those doctor's offices, and then nothing negatively, it's great for urgent care and the rest. But those are increasing the call volumes in the surrounding towns as well. So we're going to Ellington more. We're going there. So if we went to Stafford or Ellington, their ambulance, as soon as they got back in service, is responding back to Tolland. That's the same response time, you know? So just the rest of the stuff to be proficient, to try to plan ahead. But you need the bodies to, you know, to get in the apparatus and provide the set, you know, the quality of work and jobs.
Your presentation, I heard what you said, that the number for 2021 has increased because this was incomplete. But you say 13% higher call average volume in the most recent 5 years versus the previous 5 years.
So it's hard to do the numbers because the first time, like we had a year and a half of COVID, everything was down. And then there was like a firecracker after COVID started opening, it went boosting. So we had a period of time that we were down for a little bit, that offsets the numbers, as well as the accidents, the other stuff, because people were home. There wasn't a lot of crashes, there wasn't a lot, it fluctuates, if you know what I mean. And then as people change their monetary things, alarms are just monitoring more. We're going to maybe not so many false alarm calls and different things. A lot of different aspects have changed. And some of it's weather driven. I mean, some of those call volumes are from the windstorms and the other aspects.
I hear everything you're saying. I'm just trying to do some math. I mean, if you have even a 15% increase of 5 year, looking at the most recent 5 years versus a 5 year, to me, sort of the basic thought is maybe you need a 15% staff increase. Well, you got a new officer at the beginning of this year, right? It was last year? It says
2 years ago?
Year before, he'll be coming off of probation, he'll be on with me for 1 year.
It says a 7th position was added in January 2021. I'm on page 53 of our packet.
Actually, Lisa, just a quick second, you want to put the packet back up
Sure.
on your screen, I'll
Yeah.
stop sharing mine. This
Was
is
that, we did a half a position?
Yes.
Yeah,
It was supposed to be 2
yeah, we delayed it for 6 months. We bring the packet back up there with me.
You delayed the funding for 6 months, but there
Right.
is a full-time person that was added in the middle of the fiscal year.
Right, he asked for 2 back then,
Yeah,
and we were only able to give him 1. At that point,
all right, so it went from
trying to find it here.
6 to 7, which is more than a 15% increase. So this is the disconnect that I see.
Yeah.
Is if
Right.
you have,
It's not all call driven.
yep,
So a lot of it's driven by statistics and standards. As I was saying before, we have to have a certain number. Otherwise, we put ourselves in the town in a liability position where if we have a death, death is a huge, besides the physical loss for everybody, it's a huge monetary loss.
Yeah.
The failure to get to a call in a timely manner in today's society is huge. The chief probably can, attest to the lawsuits have increased over just stupid things over the years. I don't think you can quantify it by call percentage.
okay.
If we could, that would be great, because it would be easy for everybody.
Sure.
But with not just the calls, but all the other activities that the firefighters do, maintaining the equipment, things of that nature, we just don't have, if we get a structure fire and it's wishing or hoping that we're going to get people leaving from work. When I was working here full-time, we had the highway department, we had a bunch of members that were working for the highway department that were released by the town to come and assist us. We don't have that anymore. So it's just, a lot of times it's those 6 people, or depending on what time of day it is, it could be 4, because they're staggered. They're not all 6 working 6 to 6. So if we get something significant based on the numbers that we need to safely operate, we're not meeting that. And we're trying to project, and we may not be perfect in the projection, but we're trying to do the best we can without over inundating the town funding wise. By the cycle that we're coming up to where we would have the extra people, that's where we really should be at that point with the staffing. Not to say that things could change and we need more at that point. We don't know, we can't predict that. We're just trying to stay on top of it. And to give the people the service that they need. More often than not, we're doing double calls back to back, quite often 3. We've had a couple Saturdays ago, it was 5 calls. Responded from St. Francis Hospital to emergency to get back to Tolland because there were no other ambulances available in the county. So it's not only us, but we're feeling the crunch from everybody else. And our staffing gets pulled every different way.
Thank you.
So we also have, okay, so Councillor Yurcheck, followed by Khan, and then
Some of my questions have already been answered. I just want to clarify. So first, it's not fire/EM person.
The way the way the grant needs to be written, have to be towards the fire standard that we're trying to meet, that standard which Carl explained. That's the way we need to. Operationally and management, that'll happen internally.
Gotcha. And then you said 6 people at all time. Does that mean at a call you need 6 people, or just like 3 at a call and 3 at the station?
Yeah, it requires 6 operational people at a fire
So
call minimum.
Sorry to interrupt. So like today, Sammy and I had a tour. And I don't know if it was planned, I doubt it was, but there.
That's what most people think I do. Either I eat else, but it was perfect timing.
There was two calls.
Yeah.
At one time. I think one was from Crystal Lake, and one was at the main fire station. And I noticed like they had a staff person and
If we didn't have that volunteer, one
Yeah,
of us
well,
would have
yeah,
been,
that's
one
what
of
I
us
was
would have
gonna
been leaving. Rob or myself would have been leaving. Carl couldn't make it, but that's where either I'm driving the ambulance or
Right.
Rob at that time of day.
That's
So
what I was gonna say, so if you didn't
Yes, ma'am.
have the woman, she is a firefighter, but you didn't have her. And the on-staff person, like you said, the chief or someone else, you would have had called mutual aid, right? Because you had 2 calls, and if you had a third call,
correct.
and if you're not there, I don't know how you feel, but if you're not there to see that. You would
Right.
think that they are just around the station doing paperwork.
Absolutely. Those
But,
days just trigger.
So, right, so I guess it was. Good to see, I guess, and then as far as the tax stabilization fund, how much do we have in there right now? Like, I guess I never get a clear answer. on
There's
how much.
nothing in there.
There's what?
0.
So how are we using that stabilization fund if we have no money in it?
We'll add to it if the council approves it. The fund exists, although there isn't any money in it at this point, as the council used it to help offset part of the mill rate. So the fund stays in action even though there isn't any money in it. And then if there's any money to be allocated in the future, the town council can do that. There's a whole process behind what will happen if there's excess revenues that should come in regarding state grants. There's a whole set of procedures which I can share with that requires us to allocate those funds to the municipal stabilization fund if we end up with excess state revenue that was not anticipated. Certainly, you have to look at what other revenues and where they're at. If there's other revenues falling short, we have to take into account that. If it's over $100,000, that amount is what will get allocated to the fund, which could be this fiscal year.
but it's not guaranteed. So I kind of have a little issue if we don't really have a guarantee, but we're planning for it, right? You're planning to?
Oh, no, the plan is to budget the money and move it into there.
And then whatever number everybody chooses, 3, 5, whatever it is it all, so say if it's 3, would it all be at one time that you get those, or is it like this chart says you get? Well, okay. The chart kind of makes it sound like you get,
What you would do with that particular, depending on if you go 3, 5, whatever,
right,
if the grant is approved, we'd hire all of them at one time. The town would not be paying for them out of the budget at one time. We would funnel in one at a time till we built up the budget to account those 3 positions, 5 positions, whatever it may be. So the goal is to try to start easing it into the budget so that you're not hiring, let's say you approve 5 people. So you're not hiring 5 people and in 3 years, all of a sudden, you're gonna have $500,000 hit your budget or impact your budget all at one time. So by building in 1 or 2 positions going forward, building in 1 year, 2 years, you'll add another, it just slowly increases the budget each year rather than increasing it all at one time, which would be a significant increase to the mill rate depending on our other revenue scenarios that play into the whole process of calculating the mill rate. So that's, the goal is to try to ease it in the meantime, use that cash because the grant would be paying for it. However, you'd be setting it aside and it's at least eased into the mill rate going forward. And then those funds can be used to offset other needs that we would need tax money for in the future. And could possibly, depending on how it's decided to be used, if it were used for capital that was going to be bonded, you're going to save the interest bonds by being able to pay cash for those items, or however the town council decides they want to use those stabilization funds in the future. But you would want to use those funds for more so one-time expenditures, because if you filter it in just to offset your mill rate for operating expenses, then the next year you may not have those funds to filter it in. So you want to try to get something, one revenue offsets it, and you're not going to have it in the next year budget for that item.
so no matter what, you get 3, 5, I don't know. I'm just,
Whatever you
we're
all
just throwing it.
decide.
It seems like that's what these charts say, 3 or 5. We'd still be budgeting for another firefighter, so we could have additional 4, additional 5, additional, wait, right? So say you got 5 through the grant, you're still hiring another firefighter through the regular budget. So you
No.
wouldn't include, so if we know we're getting a 3, 4, 5, we're gonna take that one out of the budget.
No.
You know what I'm trying to say?
No,
Not
the
quite
thing
easy to
is,
explain.
in year 1,
Yeah.
okay, was that I proposed were to either add 1 person to the budget that year or 2 people to the budget. And so I showed what the increase to the mill rate would be based on those different scenarios. In year 1, my goal is to at least add 1 public safety officer, no matter what, whether we got the grant or not. That 1 person, if we got the grant, person would be part of that whole grant process. So we would hire, if the grant was awarded and you said we could have 4 or 5 firefighters, we would hire that first one as part of the budget normal. And if we knew right away that the grant was awarded, we would hire the other 3, 4, 5, what other, not 5. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think
That
so.
person
It's
would
just
be
trying
there
to-
no matter what. So rather than those funds, if the grant was not awarded, those funds would not be allocated to the municipal stabilization fund, and they would be used towards that particular position that would have been used in the future.
And then I have one last question. I
Okay.
only get 10 minutes or something. So I'm on the clock. So if we hire more staff or get the grant, whatever, I'm assuming you might need a number ambulance person. Right? I need, how many we have now?
Two.
So if we hire more people, are you going to need another ambulance?
So you won't see that. So we cycle our ambulances every 5 years. So we are in the process of the last cycle right now with the last ambulance that we did because we did remounts. So those ambulances are at the last cycle. So the last ambulance we just bought last year coming up will be the next ambulance. So you won't see that ambulance be able to be a backup third until about 4 years down the road.
So you'll have 2 years, even though, 2 years, 2 ambulances, even though you have more staff. Right, understand that, right?
We have 2 ambulances already.
No, I know, but if we have more staff, you still only have 2 ambulances, so you, I guess if you're trying to go.
So like
to-
today, the calls at
Right.
your general,
Yep.
you had a fire truck and a service truck go to the middle school with them. You to somebody coming out of a school because we had no ambulances. If I had that third ambulance, then I probably would have been able to provide the staff to take care of the third patient.
And that would have also generated revenue for the town as well. Because each of our calls we do bill out.
Right.
And that does help in another way for providing equipment for fire trucks, things like that.
So
replace
technically,
the
you want to have enough
ambulances.
ambulances, but
Right.
you would have a backup of
Right.
your other. That's it.
All right.
Promise.
Thank you, Councilor Yuchek. So Councilor Khan, followed by Councilor Nuccio.
Yes, sir. Even if we get the grant or not get it, if we hire 1 or 2 or 3 people, of 3 officers from the start, what do you think the middle rate will go up? How much would you, just about the area?
I think one was like, 2 were
One is
0.13%. I mean, not percent, see, I gotta stop saying that, 0.13 mils. And so you add, it would be about 0.2, right about 0.2 mils added
Would be
to the mill rate. So if we're at 37.11, it would be 37.31
That's
per thousand.
every first, second, and third year, and fourth, and so and goes on.
I'm sorry.
The first, you're talking about first year or second?
Well, that would be the first year. Say if you added 3 people in year 1,
Okay.
your mill rate would, depending on all the other things that are involved in calculating it, but say if everything was stable, the way it would go up to about 37.31 mils per thousand. So each year you would have that, but if you added others to the scenario, each year you'd have those additional people coming on board, which would be another, let's say, 0.8 mils each year. So you're adding in, for 2 people, I think it's around 170,000. So this, for this particular scenario here. Okay, you'll see here in this particular year, if you added 2 people, the value, the dollar value that would increase the budget is about 170,000.2 mils.
Okay, John,
Yes, sir.
thank you for your tour today, and I think what I saw, I never knew that, but it's like what I saw from inside, I think to me, I think you're doing maintaining everything and running everything on, I don't think so it's a easy job. But I think you're doing a fantastic job to me as a person. The only question, like if you have three more people, so you're gonna have 10 officers, basically. What are you trying to achieve, or what are you trying to maintain with those 10? How many stations, how many?
So I'm gonna
stations
catch 22, which, if you guys have specific questions, they could probably better off be written email, and I can send it. Frank is online, so I've sent Frank, and Frank is one of my career guys that has done a lot of grants. This is his first SAFER grant, but he spent over a department up in Mass that recently was awarded it. Betsy spent about a couple weeks, and also went to training for the SAFER grant so we could learn and adapt to it. It's very specific as far as what you're writing and requiring. If I was given the opportunity to write, I guess I might as well say it here, if I was given the opportunity to address staffing through operational and current budget processes, yeah, I might have to start looking at covering a longer nighttime. The ideal situation would be able to have 3 guys on at 6 a.m. and still having 3 guys on at 6 p.m. is huge for us because it covers at least bodies and situations. Would I look at a 3 to 11 p.m. to take that first initial bang out of those 2 calls back to back? So that gives me a reassurance that I know the first call after 6 is handled, and then I have a duty crew on. Now coverage, but it also gives me extra bodies right off the get-go out the door, which cuts down the response time. And I can do that operationally level. Be very specific and careful if awarded a grant, if you know what I mean. I think Mr. Lubis shaking his head because he knows where I'm going with that.
And one of the other things is that the grant wants they look towards response times. And based on what the size of our town and how we're classified, wouldn't be unusual to say in our furthest station out on Plains Road that we staff that to take up a shortage per se. We could do that.
During the daytime, we would do that. Years ago, that's what we used to do. We used to put the 2 extra guys, 1 at Garing Road and 1 at Plains Road. We were wasting more time and wear and tear on vehicles because it was every other hour that they were traveling back down to headquarters. And the ambulance was coming back over. I was getting nothing done. Plus I'm wearing and tearing. So I'm like, you know, and that's why we've gone to service type of vehicles, because I'm not going to run a $750,000 truck to a simple service calls when we run service vehicles. But we were running back and forth, and finally said, that's it. If I get 3 guys out the door and I got to back up here, because now a lot more of the calls are requiring additional personnel for lifting and extricating people out of houses, because it's just a lot of their in-laws or family moving in, and we've got a lot more of that, and a lot of more medical terminology of sending patients home with medical equipment or anything else are happening, and it's increasing. That's where the generation's going, if that makes sense.
Let me understand myself.
Yeah.
The mutual aid.
Mhm.
If you don't answer one, whatever it is,
2 to 3 minutes, then there's a retone.
and then if you send one team to one, God forbid something happened in Tolland, and then what happens?
So basically what ends up happening is there's an active electronic program that the dispatchers are now seeing on a screen like you are seeing here. And when the call goes out for the town, they see the personnel. If they're not, depending on the call ratio, they have a 2-minute, 2.5 minute, maybe 3-minute time frame that if no one signs on or they don't have the adequate personnel to meet that standard, they hit an automatic retone. An automatic retone in Tolland automatically hits the career staff that they're allowed to come back or they're asked to come back to provide staffing. If they sign on and they hit the app, then we meet the staffing, but they got to respond to the station in order to get the equipment. If that doesn't happen, town, then it goes to the next town. You could be playing the same Russian roulette with the next town over, because Wellington only has the same, they only have 2 people, and if their first call is out, well, then they're depending on volunteers, so you're playing that Russian roulette. So Coventry's covered by commercial service, or they have their own people, but it's through a commercial company that supplies your ambulance. We're going to Coventry more because they can't provide it, so volunteers to staff their second, then it goes to the next town. So like right now, a lot of times Manchester's fire truck is coming to Tolland to provide ALS service.
And then my second last question would be, is there a technician on this ambulance? Like now we have, is there a satisfied technician or just a
So in order for the,
CPA, just a C?
so state requirement, in order to run an ambulance, you need a mandated crew. You need an EMT and at least an MRT. An MRT can only drive, but at all times you need an EMT in back of the ambulance. If we get those extra calls, I need that extra body. We're training our fire police members now to be able to drive the ambulance, so then I don't have to send and lose another technician. So we're trying to think, we're trying to generate outside the box, but right now, an EMT and an EMTs and firefighters, because we require that as far as the hiring requirements.
All right. My last question is related to the first one, that let's say if you get 3 more people, is there possibly that at least you, one station, at least 6 to 12 or 6 to at least 24/7, or at least one station that at least there's a confidence that at least somebody will show up rather than depending on volunteer. If we do get three more officers.
We're limited with the grant about not creating extra shifts. So we're focusing on the operational times that we have right now. We do have leeway operationally, as the chief said, at some point in the future to change that, because all of our career staff are firefighters. So they can cross over work EMS on the ambulance or fire. And that's like he said, that is our minimum requirement. So there is the potential for that to happen, but it's in writing the grant, that's an automatic rejection to add a shift. So we have to work it another way once we
Save the grant of what amount of dollar value that's in it. Maybe some of the other communities won't be so proficient in jumping on it, but I think that you'll see if the same grants offered next year, you'll have an abundance of communities because of what's happening around, all start to jump on a bandwagon and then your times. But if we produce our records of what you saw up there, as Ms. Murray said, with the scheduling of what's there, and meet that 1710. If we have a really golden opportunity to say this is where we're staffing, this is what we're going to be having on the scene, it's like a win situation, if that makes sense,
Okay, the last question, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
If you get the grant or you don't get the grant, that's decide. Let's say if the council approve three officers to you, let's say tomorrow, I'm just saying that. Let's say tomorrow, if they, any possibility that either one officer, 2 or 3, whatever the budget you have, you can adjust a body or 2. I don't know what your budget is. I'm sorry, I do not know it right now.
If not approve or move forth with the safer grant, we are gonna try to provide you with what we're providing you now, the best quality of service, and we're gonna do the best we can
No.
with. But
Not
I can't adjust without,
within a year, but whatever your budget is right now. I don't know.
if you take the staffing down and start moving stuff, you're gonna have a bigger disaster during the day. You're just, your population of what do you, is that what you're asking, moving one of the bodies now?
Maybe if I can interject, I think Counselor Khan, if I'm hearing it correctly, is asking if we didn't go forward with the grant.
Yeah.
But you still put in the request for 3 people, and we decided to do that through the normal budgetary procedure. Would that then create the opportunity for flexibility to
Yeah.
go
Yes.
later into the evening compared to right now? If we were to move forward with the grant, we'd have it covered financially for a few years.
Yeah,
Then afterwards, it would fold into the town's budget, and from there, you could adjust your as you see fit. right?
so operational wise, if you added 3 in the operation budget wise or something else, I have more authority power to move the shift,
Okay,
which I said I would try to create that 3 to 11 shift to take that burden off. If we could maintain our membership of what we have now and give them some added support, well, then we're gonna strive to keep that volunteerism and what we have for great people. It will just push that hopefully out. June, people forget when UConn closes, I lose all those great students I have, and we're very fortunate. So when UConn closes, I'm back in a bad rut in the summertime. Does that make sense?
makes sense. Are you all set?
If I answered, I hope. I'm sorry if I hope I.
I think you did. All right, so Counselor Nuccio followed by Counselor Luba.
Hi there. So I have a couple of questions, a couple of statements. One, I think you just answered. So say we go forward with 3. There's no way right now we can stretch out the time to after 6. Because I'm looking at your call volume percentage. And of course, the highest call volume is really from like 11 o'clock in the morning until it looks like probably around 6 o'clock-ish. And then it starts coming down. So if we add the 3, there's to kind of bump out to cover past 6 o'clock is what.
So like what Carl kind of indicated, when you write your safer grant, you don't want to show that you're creating another additional shift. Because it's computer generated, it'll be an automatic denial, if that makes sense.
Okay, but after year 3, we could technically do that, because after year 3, you're no longer funded underneath the grant.
General auditing process and stuff, the higher ups are so busy that I don't think I'll get audited.
Okay.
Is that the right answer?
Well, after year 3, it's not,
It's not, it's ours. We
Exactly.
own it.
It's a town
It's 100% the town's
And we
responsibility. so.
also have the latitude, chief has a latitude to
Operationally.
move the existing,
The
personnel.
regular people, right.
not
hear ya.
specifically,
you,
there
I hear
are,
you.
there are ways to.
You don't need to get into it. I hear
Yes,
you.
thank you.
So my next question is, I've heard a lot tonight, and I've heard a lot from you guys personally and all that about the mutual aid thing. And I'm wondering how much of our call volume right now is dedicated to mutual aid. And I hate to say this, but airplanes say put your face mask on first before you put anybody else's on. So I'm wondering how much of this volume is us going out of town, and what does that mean for the residents of town when that happens?
At the point where there's an operational meeting already established for myself and Assistant Chief Dojan, and it will probably come to a management level after the holidays, because I didn't want to bring it to that level, but it will probably come because one other town already and 2 other towns have already had their services bringing up through the management level, but it's fluctuating. So it means it's fluctuating. It means that the staffing's like good, and also we're not there, and boom, banging out, back out like Carl said. 15 calls in one day, and not everyone mutual aid. Something, I can't fix your Band-Aid.
Well, that's what I'm concerned with.
Correct,
is,
we're
John, I know you guys are known, like Tolland Fire Department is known as being a great fire department, well-trained, awesome, always there to help somebody. I appreciate that. I thank you for that. I applaud that. But if we're getting slammed with
Yeah.
mutual aid, what does that do to, how much of this volume is actually Tolland volume, you know,
Yeah.
and not,
And the thing is we don't want to break the system because we have a great mutual aid system. And I would never want to throw a rock because you never know when that rock might come back in your backyard. You might be in the same predicament with staffing or call level shortage wise. So we're trying to nonchalantly work it, if I should say. With upper, service providers, both commercially and both municipality, because I can tell you the commercial services are struggling as well. And things might be fixed with Trinity Health down the road after, January, which could open some Pandora's boxes of other additional services. But that's a different municipality fight that's at a state level.
Mhm. So, and I want to recognize what you're saying too. This is not a Tolland problem.
No.
It's not even just a fire department problem. Like you said, I think the police academy this year, this class is one of the lowest classes, and they expect it to be, if they're lucky, graduating around 50-something cops, when they have about 200 that are gonna retire.
You're gonna see the fire chiefs and police chiefs sit together real
And
quick
cry.
after January to
Yeah.
come back to the legislations and the rest, because
Yeah.
we flew people in from Pennsylvania, because this same aspect happened in 2010. So you have a dialogue of, over 179 chiefs. I mean, you got 300 fire departments in Connecticut, you got 169 towns, but you got 398 fire departments in Connecticut. So this is gonna be becoming a bigger level, because we're trying to plan and we're trying to address it.
Yeah,
So,
and it's all of healthcare across the board. So
Correct.
like you said, these private ambulance carriers, it's across the board everywhere. So this is a pinch that we're gonna be feeling. So for me, I'm supportive of doing 3. I think 5 is gonna be just to manage that into the budget. I like the idea of the 3, but I'm caveating it in that if we do the 3, the $528,756, because the nice thing about this is that we get 3 right away. And then we filter them in one at a time. That $528,756, I'm looking for every which way that I can try to find turf field that isn't going to increase debt. So looking at a way to utilize that for one-time project expenses. I know you guys have the ambulance built in, into your budget coming up. And I would hope if we're doing these calls for the commercial carriers that we're billing all of these ambulance calls, correct?
yes, ma'am.
Regardless of mutual aid or not.
Yes, ma'am.
So we should be good from the reserve fund, from the revenue that you guys are ambulance. I've always said, the last 5 years now, I'd love a 3rd ambulance. If this helps us get to there in 3 years after everybody's done their assigned grant job, then in 3 years, we can get that 3rd ambulance that helps create more revenue stream for the fire department for what we need. That's my caveat on,
Are you looking to expand our service level as far as other avenues? Be careful what you
I'm
wish.
looking to get you a 3rd ambulance with revenue generating, if we can get 3
We're-
more.
And
public
like I
safety
said,
officers.
the 30 ambulance, when it was down for some of the new council members, that costed us $40,000 that month.
Exactly. When it's
So,
down,
yeah.
it costs us revenue, which really doesn't impact the
Right.
town. It
Correct.
impacts the revenue that we put aside for the fire department. So you guys are pretty much, besides your staffing, self-funded for fire trucks, ambulances, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So that opportunity to have more revenue
Yep.
eventually is going to be beneficial to the fire department as a whole. So that's where my mindset is. A little concerned about the mutual aid. Glad you're taking care of that, or at least looking into that. I like the idea that we might be able to do some finagling, and I'm supportive of the 3 with the caveat that we're using this for one-time capital expenditure items that can benefit all. Also on top of getting you guys the help that you clearly need.
I think down the road from, speaking like you said, we learned a lot about it. Frank and Betsy are gonna be my experts, our experts in writing this, but from a council and a standpoint and from a state level, I think this new safer and the fire assistance grants needs to change terminology wise. And I think that's what every community right now should be pushing, because we all run first responder, fire, EMS, a level. Needs help fixing our own. So we need to, push and advocate for that from a higher level.
Well, you've got an ally in me, John. Reach out, anything I can do, I will always help.
Thank you, ma'am.
You're very welcome. That's it for me. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be, for one of the few times, I'll try and be as brief as possible. Love you guys. I owe you my life, and I told you that before. You guys have saved my life before. I am here for whatever you guys need. I echo everything that Ms. Nuccio has said. I think that 3 people is something that I would be advocating for. That the 5 people at this point is not something that I think that we can necessarily absorb that easily. I think it's something that we can build upon. I agree with getting the additional ambulance because I think that we need it. So it's something that I think that this is a good building spot. I think we can build on from here and get you guys up to the staffing that you need and that you want as quickly as possible. I understand the restriction that you guys have with the safer grants. You don't have to explain it to me as far as what the requirements are. It's unfortunate that that's the way the grant is written. But I think it's something that in 3 years, once we come off that grant, then it'll give you a lot of the flex. That's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Was
Thank
the
you, gentlemen.
response time okay that night?
Say again?
Was the response time okay? Minutes?
Response time was outstanding, and I even got the chief to come there for me as well, so.
So thank you. Before I go to Councilor Khan, I just had actually one question because I haven't had a chance to ask yet. Are there any other towns applying in our area for the safer grant? That's one. If you don't know the answer, that's fine. I think as it's been echoed by a number of councilors, the mutual aid is a concern, and I think we certainly want to apply. But I don't want people to say, oh, well, they're applying for the safer grant. We don't need to make our.
It's hard because
Yeah.
a lot just get tied into the firefighter assistance grant. And I was gonna try to do that as a survey, but I thought it'd be better off if I keep quiet, like I've been learning. Not to send that email as a county coordinator to the other towns and say, hey, how many people are applying? Like, I didn't wanna
Yeah.
insinuate that idea, so I thought I would leave it quiet. Probably better off.
My apologies for thinking out loud then.
No, no, but you know what I'm saying. Even from a county level, we're trying to do more together, and as well as even service levels. So, not that I've heard of, which I'm very surprised of, but I'm sure, Frank probably has a better dialogue as far as how many people are gonna be applying, but not that I heard right off the get-go.
Okay, thank you, Chief. I would probably say I'm in concurrence with Councilor Luba and Nuccio. I think at this point, I'm more comfortable. And I feel like there's a better long-term plan with the 3, and I think especially knowing that it's a 3-year period. This is starting to be onboarded or offloaded, so they would have a better idea reaching out to you or a future chief. I mean, I assume you're going to be here forever, but but the chief and deputy chief, whoever they may be, would be able to reassess after that period of time how the 3 has gone. At least me personally, I don't know how the rest of the council feels, but getting to that point, if you felt like the 5 was the absolute need, that way into future capital budgets or future budget cycles.
Thank you.
All right, so Councilor Khan, you had a question?
Yeah, last question. I don't know how it works, but it came to whenever you provide a service from home to the hospital, is there a charge to charge residents?
Charge back to the,
There's a bill, the bill goes to,
so what happens is we have to bill for everyone. It's a state requirement. And every single year, the state of Connecticut redoes their charge ratios. So one of the new things they added like this year was lift assist. So we could start billing. So some of the lift assist, and when we go out, we don't transport somebody, it's an assist and we can charge for that. But everything else is all state regulated by mileage. So it's $19.23 a mile if we transport you. So your average bill could be $1,700.
that means even though if I'm paying for that ambulance officer, gas, everything else,
Yeah, it comes out of your healthcare medical insurance wise and everything else. And then we have a separate program that we work with the internal residents. That I'd really not like to elaborate on.
So that's why,
Bundle billing program too with our commercial services. Many towns don't have bundle billings. So if you lived in another community, you get an ambulance bill and then you get an ALS bill as well. So an ALS bill could be $3,000. We have a bundle billing program in town where that's where you'll see and you'll learn through Mrs. Hickok's budgeting and the aspects. We pay a commercial service for a paramedic service, and we have 2 that we're signed up with right now. We have to look this year to expand it because of. So we've been looking to like Trinity Health, Summers, and Manchester now because of what's happening in all the communities. They want to sign a contract as well. So, but everything is state and regulated. We can't, any call that goes through a report, I can't say, oh, this is so-and-so. It's automatically generated by a third-party billing vendor. So it's done right to the letter of the law.
All right, so if there's no other questions. I think we've heard from a majority of people, or at least I think myself, Councilor Luba, Councilor Nucci, I think maybe Councilor Regan, and my apologies on missing else, that has an inclination towards approving 3. I just want to give an opportunity to any councilors who haven't spoken yet or clarify that if they are comfortable with that being the ultimate motion that's put forward to the council to vote on would be 3 firefighters for 3 years.
I didn't want to play my cards. I just want to hear everybody go. I definitely think, like I said, 3, I think 3 is a good start. Today was, I always do, and I'm appreciative of the fire department always do. But definitely, like I said, seen in action, but I think another good place to go is the dispatch center, see how busy they are.
Anything you just like to tour with them?
Yeah,
Town
because that's
manager.
not under
I know,
us,
yeah, that's
but-
true, but I've talked. to
I can set that
before,
up,
But I
just-
think it's like, you see how busy they are
Yeah,
too,
okay.
it's a good opportunity, but anyways, yeah. 3.
Okay. So in that case, then I would entertain a motion to approve the draft resolution as laid out in 9.1 for salary for funding 3 firefighters for 3 years.
So
Lulu, oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, you got it.
I'll also move.
I'll second.
So moved by Councilor Lubis, seconded by Councilor Nuccio. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, it is unanimous.
Go
Thank
forth
you.
and write grants.
Thank you very much. Best of luck. And of course, if you need to come back to us for anything, any updates.
I'm glad
Don't do it until
appreciate
after New Year.
I'm glad you're asking that. So the one thing that would help our, you open the floor up, Mr. Jones, if you don't mind me
It's an open
speaking.
dialogue. Yes.
So in all honesty, one of the biggest aspects is to show that there is support from the council to provide the backup fund. That's like a really crucial piece. And then obviously I would need assistance and support to obviously politically hit the other, legislators and everybody else wise. But from an aspect, the first biggest piece is what you just did tonight and showing that. So we're grateful.
Yes, very, very.
Thank you.
Thank you. And yeah, of course, obviously you guys are nonstop, but you don't have to stay for the rest of the meeting if you want to for a few minutes.
The rest of the month.
The rest of the evening.
Get about 5 or 6 minutes.
Yeah.
But no,
Thank
thank you both, Deputy Jones and Chief Vitale.
Thank you, gentlemen.
All right, so moving on to item 10. Actually, I'll wait for a moment while you're clarifying before I go to the interim town manager report.
Mr. Chair, while they're taking care of that, since it is now 3 minutes of 10, I don't know if we need to move to continue on past 10 o'clock. I don't know if we have to do that anymore.
Yeah. I was trying to look up in our rules and procedures, and I don't believe
Yeah, I know.
that it is a requirement. I do appreciate you making that point of note, because I did want to clarify. And also want to take that.
I'm not making a motion, 'cause I
If you want to, we can-
Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
All right. The clerk has returned. Everyone's had a moment of reprieve. To item number 10, report of the interim town manager.
Okay. A few things here. You already mentioned about the Wanet celebration weekend. The other thing is regarding the order for the shirts and such. I think you had another one that you were gonna provide a payment for. And-
Jesus, call her out. Oh my God.
Well, no, it's not like, she just said she would, it's not. like
Wheels on the
she's
bus
not-
do go around.
Oh, wait. I just
Listen, we're
wanna
all getting
remind-
punchy at 10 o'clock at night.
No, I just want to remind whoever wants these shirts that you wanted to get, just to try to get me the payment so I can put the order.
Yeah, and then just to
And
interject,
if there's
five
anyone
yeah,
else.
Counselor, or just so you're aware, there are, we have polos that are town council designated. Counselor Lucy stepping down, we did have a meet and greet in the town manager's office. I think you might still have samples in there if you want to
No,
order
they're
one.
gone.
They're
As
gone?
of today, they
Okay.
left.
Okay, well then you can coordinate if you were interested with the Chief Lightel, because they use the contracted service to purchase it
Yeah.
long sleeve, short sleeve, so.
Okay, thank you.
So that was one thing. That was just the quick thing to get out of the way. I am more. Okay, another thing, and it's important for those of you who are new and maybe not accustomed to public meetings and such, there is going to be a Freedom of Information Act training program being held here at our library on January 13th at 6 p.m. It will be in the library program room. If you're interested in participating, please let my office know and we'll make sure that you're registered for it. But I think it would be extremely helpful to understand the Freedom of Information rules, because there's certain ways as counselors that you can act or not act, or things that you can do or not do that you have to be cautious of regarding the state laws that govern all that. So this would be the training that would help educate you in those areas.
What
So
day is that again?
it's January 13th, that's in the library program room,
Thursday.
right? And then the other item that I have is that CROG has reached out regarding a position. Usually it's for it's a policy board. And there's usually, it's the highest elected official is usually the one appointed to the board. However, if the council decided they wanted someone else, or the chair doesn't want to do it, or you want to have an alternate, I think discussion has to be made regarding how you would like to handle that. CROG's policy board, what this person does is they generally have a few items for the municipalities, and they usually have to approve it on behalf, whether they're sending a letter to the governor or, asking for a statewide mask mandate of the governor. They did that a few months ago. Approving the planning department to conduct studies on various routes, streets, things like that. There's different things services that CROGs offer. And this policy board oversees a lot of that. So it's usually the high official who serves on that policy board. So they reached out to me and asked if we would be appointing someone to that board. And currently it's Bill Eccles, who is long gone. So I don't think anything was reappointed back then. I've been attending the meetings since I started. They're fairly quick. They're usually at noon. Do them, but it's the fourth Wednesday of every month at noon, January through December. And then July and August, they don't usually meet. They also have an annual meeting in June, where they have all the towns attend. There's usually various things that they discuss. I'm not with it because it's all new to me, but anyway, they reached out and would like to know who will be taking that position as the first attendee, and then if there's an alternate, that you'd like to support in place of that person if they are not available.
And so I don't know if this is an action item for this evening, but when Lisa and I were corresponding, I did express an interest in filling that role as Bill Eccles did as the chair, but I would be open to having discussions with having an alternate, knowing that I do work full-time, but I do have flexibility to step away to take those Wednesday calls that I put in my schedule. So if in the event I didn't have that availability, I'd probably want to have that.
I nominate
alternate
Steve.
fill.
I trust you more than us too.
As the alternate, I don't know if I could serve as my own alternate, but I appreciate the duplication. But so that might be something just to keep in mind based off of Lisa's conversation, that if there is any interest from any counselors that would be interested in being an alternate, shoot me an email and we can either put it on the next agenda or a future agenda, just to have as a general discussion piece. But with that, I just turn it back to
But so
Lisa.
in that case, then we'll definitely put you on as the person to attend. Usually it is the chair of the town council.
Yeah.
And then if you want an alternate, you guys can discuss it as a council. And we can always add that later on, but I will let her know and get you the contact information and everything. And I think that's pretty much all I had for tonight.
Thank you. Are there any questions from counselors regarding the town manager's report before we move on to 11? All right, seeing none. Moving on to 11, adoption of minutes. To adopt the minutes as laid out in 11.1 through 11.4. And of course, as a friendly reminder, and I'm sure most people do know that if you weren't in attendance for a meeting, you can approve it just by reviewing the minutes. You don't have to abstain unless you truly don't feel comfortable approving those minutes. So
I'll make them.
I will make that motion.
motion by Councilor Vice Chair Egan, seconded by Councilor Luba. Is there any further discussion? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Any abstentions?
I'm gonna abstain.
All right, Councilor Murray abstains, so it's 6-0-1, that passes. Correspondence to council. So just a quick precursor, obviously, Councilor Calusi, former Councilor Calusi used to handle that. I believe Councilor Buchek offered to cover it for this meeting, but we may want to have it reassigned at a future date possibly. I don't know if anyone is interested, but obviously if anyone would like to communicate that to me directly, we can reassign those roles and responsibilities.
So prior to mine and Brenda's joining, the correspondence to council was correspondence that went direct, didn't go to everybody. So like it was stuff that Bill Eccles got as chair, stuff like that. It wasn't a layout of everybody's emails. So I don't know if maybe we want to rethink this and think about how we want to do it, because I know there were people on all sides that complained about my thing wasn't read or accurately and this and that, and rather than going down and breaking down, this person wrote in about this and this person wrote in about that, if there's a way for us to and there's actually nothing in I think in our charter about correspondence to council
Now,
about having to be read.
if I recall several years ago, I don't even think we read them at meetings.
We didn't.
It,
We
it
didn't.
just started
It
when,
started when I
with you.
Yeah, Brenda wanted to do it.
Yeah, but we never did that.
We didn't, and back and look at the minutes, there's nothing on there about correspondences. So it was taken on at that point. So maybe that's something that we want to think about. How do we want to do that? Because rather than somebody gets missed or somebody gets this not read the right way or whatever, maybe we talk about it.
Okay, yeah, no, I think that might be a perfect, good point of recommendation or consideration to review or revise our order of business, but maybe we should amend our rules of procedure at some point in the future to clarify how correspondence to council is communicated, if at all, in public session. But with that being said,
Distracted all. This is a lot here. I mean, do you want me to go through it or? I
Three
don't know.
letters said this, 3 letters said that.
I think I would be fine with at least this meeting to kind of go with but I think we should put that on a future agenda to kind of clarify.
All right, so we had a couple, just summarizing the best I can, so a couple emails regarding next steps to helping those in need with contaminated wells, hoping that some of the AERP money that we're getting back can help them with that. Some emails regarding turf not be responsible by the schools, being told to be fiscally responsible. An email from a couple of board of ed members to continue discussion on the turf field. Resident concern about the town council resignation and social media. Resident sent a link regarding youth and mental health. Resident concerned about another resident concerned not to absorb any costs for the turf field. Concerns about town council using words like hit. It's mentioned a few times tonight. You know, using words, maybe using words expressed, another person concerned about the words being hit. Another writer concerned about using the word, geez, we got a few, but word hit. It is negative to the town, maybe using different words instead of that.
I tried it.
No, I appreciate it.
Yeah. And multiple emails from the same resident about ways to be more efficient with the environment, practicing examples, solar panels, electric homes, and climate change. I think I got most of them all.
Okay.
Great.
Okay. So moving on to item 13, chairperson's report. Just a few items. So obviously welcome Councilor Murray to the council. You know, moving forward, I'm sure, you know, we're going to throw a whole bunch of stuff at you. I think the first one is to review the liaison positions that Councilor Lucy had and making sure that those positions can be filled, or if we need to realign who has what. And then following with that, a quick reminder of BOE liaison months. I know Councilor Udacek and Luba have sent me their months. There's actually a small that via email. Okay, great. So right now I think it's January, February, March. I think we're trying to figure out the fourth month, but essentially April through December right now is currently open. So counselors want to email me directly what months are preferable. Try not necessarily go on first come, first serve, but you know, appreciate giving preference to everyone's needs, knowing that's a volunteer position. Second item, just want to express appreciation for everyone that was able to attend the tree attended. I think people loved it, and it was great to see everybody back in person on the green. So quick reminder to counselors, our goal setting meeting tomorrow at 6:30. I believe we'll be continuing to provide refreshments.
Yep.
So I know last time there's a little bit extra left over, so come hungry.
I ordered less this time.
Okay,
And what I will be, the employees have a little get together tomorrow evening. So I will make an appearance there at least to wish. I will make sure that the refreshments are here. So certainly they'll be here by 5, 6 o'clock. So if you want to come early and relax, while you know, you're welcome to. It'll be in the kitchen on the table. So feel free. And I will be here by 6:30 for sure.
thank you. Another quick item obviously has been mentioned multiple times. The Walnut Park event is on the 18th at 11:30 a.m. All counselors are able to make it. I will just make a note that there was a citation request submitted very early this morning, recognizing Joe Marandino for their their artistic volunteerism or engagement in multiple areas, including the Walnut Park. So just looking at the procedures, there's a little bit of back and forth, but I believe we did finalize some language. So there will be a citation presented to Mr. Marandino at the event, looking to coordinate with the Conservation Commission so they're aware of that from their procedures, but wanting to recognize all the work that Joe has done in the community. So following that, there was a communication from the Conservation Commission chair, that's somewhat related to it. They just sent me a one-off individually wanting to recognize Lisa Hancock for all your work and appreciated a lot of your communications and engagement with them. So they just wanted to make sure I relayed that to you, and I figured I'd save it for this report.
Go.
Season's greetings to everyone, you know, to town, to all the counselors, wishing you a very safe and peaceful holiday season, since our next regular meeting is not until after the holidays. even though we're meeting tomorrow, so I just wanted to recognize that and wish all of you well. If you're traveling or not traveling, that you have a safe time with family. Yeah. And then finally, the chairperson's hour, obviously this month it was canceled, but hopefully going back in earnest starting next year. Back to having those regular hours, and I'll be encouraging chairs of other boards and commissions if they'd like to attend to sit in and provide any input. That's always appreciated, but most likely the first, I believe first Thursday of January, we'll be looking to set it up, I think, for 6 or 6:30 as the usual, I believe, half-hour to hour meeting slot. So with that being said, that was all I had for chairperson's report. So we will move to communications and petitions from councilpersons.
Can I just share
Oh,
one?
yes.
Just in Chair, I will be on vacation.
Denied.
I'm not sure, it's too late, it's already been approved.
How dare you?
Town manager approved it.
By whom? By whom?
I will, I'm not sure when I'm leaving, but I'm tempted. I'm tempted, but I will be back, I promise. I'm tentatively leaving Tuesday, but if I get all my work and everything done, I may be, so I'm not sure yet. But I will be attending the December 28th meeting remotely. And I will be available by cell phone, computer, whatever is necessary. I'm taking it all with me, so there shouldn't be an issue. Mike Wilkinson will also be local and available. He will be on vacation also, but he will also be available to address any needs. Well, we're gone. Thank you for letting me interrupt.
No worries. So item 14, communications and petitions from council persons.
Just to
Council, your turn.
Probably have to send an email tomorrow, but I just want to thank hopefully the fire department, public works, parks and the senior center for the tours today. We were there longer than very helpful and impressive. Everybody does for our town. And thank you to Lou, he helped me find a name, but I was wondering if we could possibly do an update on COVID numbers with Rob Miller, since numbers are going up. Just something I'm putting out there that I haven't done that in a while, right? Like June, whatever.
Months ago.
it was, but-
You should give me email.
I mean, we get weekly emails, but maybe we could come to council meetings before and counselors can ask questions. Just ask and
Yeah, and I think that seems fair, and I think especially we gave that one ARP allocation of funds for, I think they're testing and vaccine clinics. It might be good to know whether or not with any increases, if they're having an increased amount of testing, or with the booster shots, if they are expecting to request that same mutual disbursement of funds between all the towns that use their services. So
I'll reach out to Rob. First meeting in January, do you think, or?
if they're available, obviously that would be good, but yeah, as needed or as available is appreciated.
Okay, that may be a heavy meeting though, with, I think the turf is on it. And the mental health task force, if I'm not mistaken, might be on that meeting, but it depends on how quickly you
it
want it.
doesn't have to be, it just,
Yeah, just a general update, or even just a general
Just-
correspondence
Oh,
from Rob. would be
I can
good.
get it quickly. If you have any specific questions that you'd like me to share with him, if you could individually, don't copy everybody, but send them to me. And if you get them to me by tomorrow, I can send it off to him and have a consolidated response sent to everybody. Does that work for
Yeah,
everyone?
that works. Yeah, otherwise, yeah, if he's willing to meet in person, we can try to afford them some time in the schedule before the budget season really kicks off. With communications or petitions, there's one other thing I wanted to add, and I forgot from the chairperson's report, but the survey did officially close for the town manager input yesterday, so the town manager's office is working through, and I think Mike Wilkinson and Megan are going through the compiled information, and they should be relaying the survey data to us within a week, hopefully before the holidays, so we can move forward with that process. So be on the lookout for that email, and then I believe going from there, they're going to publicize that data to the community in some format. I know it's still being worked out, but I'd say within the next week, expect that information to hit the counselors' email addresses. All right, seeing no other communications, we'll move to 15, public list of participation on any subject within the jurisdiction of the town council with a 3-minute limit. I see Lisa Burns has her hand up, and just a quick reminder, if you're on the phone, *9, otherwise state your name and address for the records. Lisa Burns.
Thank you. Yes, this is Lisa Burns, 214 Slater Road. I have 3 comments to make. I don't know if they've been mentioned before, so if they are, my apologies. The first is sometimes it's difficult to hear with the masks on. I would request to look into maybe having some closed caption available. I know some of the platforms do allow it, and even with people who are hard, it would be very helpful. So that was my first comment. My second comment is with the town shirts and clothing that are available, it would be really nice if others could also participate in getting some of these clothing items. I know I would. I know you're not probably offering them to everybody in the public, but we do have people working on boards and commissions and committees that I think to be part of that order or part of that purchasing of different items with the town seal on it. And then third, my last item is on the contaminated wells. Is there any discussion about what we're going to be putting on the roads in the wintertime? If it's my understanding, and I could have the wrong information, but the reason why we're getting material that we're using on the roads and that it's washing into the wells. So my question is, how are we preventing that in the future? Those are my 3 points tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa Burns. I don't know, in terms of Hancock, if you're comfortable answering it, any of those questions in particular, or if you would like to clarify at least, or reach out to Public Works about the situation, what they may or may not be using.
I can respond if you'd like me to. Okay.
Yeah.
Number one, regarding the purchasing of shirts, if there's anything you want there, you can reach out to me. I don't have the samples any longer, but there's 2 different styles and each person pays for their own. And they are $70 and $100 the type of style shirt that you request. But if you're interested, please reach out to me and I'll connect you with John, and we can get an order placed if you're interested. Regarding the road salt, first of all, we don't have any sort of information that specifically says that the well concerns or issues road salt, as far as any results, testing results that are directly proving that that's the situation. So I can't respond regarding, if it's the road salt causing it, or if it's a water softener or a combination or whatever. However, the plan right now is to continue with the same type of material on the roads. However, in the past couple of years, we have reduced the amount that is distributed along the roads in comparison to prior years. So there's a lesser amount being put down. But from my understanding, we're going to continue. Our trucks are all equipped with the equipment that does spread the chemical, and everything would be extremely expensive, but right now that the goal is to continue with what we have in our storage.
Thank you,
I
Lisa.
think that's all I have.
Just checking the screen one more time. Don't see anyone with their hand raised. So with that being said, I would entertain a motion for adjournment at 10:22 p.m. So moved by Councilor Nuccio. Oh, sorry. Oh, your hand just went up. We can go back to you. So 3-minute limit and name and address.
Good Good evening. This is Kenny Trice, 53 Doe Run. And my comment is just real simple. Congratulations, Katie. Welcome to the town council. I'm sure you'll be an asset. I'm sure everyone there will value your presence. That's all I want to say.
Thanks,
Thank
Kenny.
you.
Thank you, Mr. Trice.
Motion to adjourn.
We have to go back to item number 16 and entertain a motion to adjourn at 10:23 p.m.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved by Councilor Nuccio. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Councilor Yudichak. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor, signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Hope not. Any abstentions? We are adjourned at 10:23.
There's a
Again,
plus.
season's greetings, wishing you all a safe and happy holiday season.